welcome along to the Education and Communities meeting Tuesday the 3rd of November. As usual, we have got a full agenda both for the communities and the education side. As normal, I think the meeting has been recorded, and what I'll ask for apologies, substitutions and declarations of interest. Sian?
Yep. Chair, we have an apology from Councillor Curley with Councillor Jim McElhenney substituting for him. That's the only apology I've had intimated to me, convener. Can I ask? Sorry.
Oh, Jim, do you have a declaration to make?
Yes, I have two declarations. On item 6, partly branching out is one of the projects that's been discussed for the Capital Regeneration Fund. So I think it might be best if I excuse myself from item 6. And on item 8, I don't think it should influence anything, but it's just to let you know under item 8, under grants to all orgs, I did act as a referee for the Port Glasgow Transport application, so just to let you know about that. But if I come out of item 6, if you can explain to me, Sian, how I get back in again, and what I have to do, or can you do it from your end?
Councillor MacLeod, we tested it this morning. We can put, even though you're on the phone, we can put you in the lobby and bring you back in again at the end of the item, which is what we'll do. Okay. Okay,
that's great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Jim. Jim McElhenney, do you have a declaration?
Yeah, thanks, convener. Items 2 and 3, being an Inverclyde Leisure board member. Items 8 and 9, being a shareholder for Greenock Morton Football Club Limited. And item 16C, being a trustee for Homestart, Renfrewshire and Inverclyde. Okay,
now, do you feel as if any of those will compromise you as to not taking part in any of the decisions, Jim?
No.
No. Okay. Right, thanks for that. Elizabeth Robertson.
Thanks, Jim. I'm going to make a declaration in agenda item 8 for the grants to all orgs. There are a couple of organisations that are to be approved that I've involved with quite heavily, and so I will leave the meeting for agenda item 8 if that's all right.
It is the ones that are still to be approved rather than those that have already been approved via...
I'm just looking at the recommendation in the papers, obviously saying that there's ones to be approved.
Right,
so,
okay.
Yeah.
That's fine, Elizabeth. Lynn? Just Inverclyde Leisure, Lynn? Okay, and that will be the same as myself at Inverclyde Leisure. So those declarations of interest, can we move along to what I... Oh, sorry, Natasha.
I've got a declaration for grants to voluntary orgs as well. I'm the chairperson of Inverclyde Youth for Christ.
Right. I think for the grants to all orgs, it's only those that we've not made a decision on, because most of the items are just for noting on the grants to all orgs. It's just the couple items that we've got to go into private session for that we've not made a decision. So anyone that is involved in anything that's already been passed really don't need to declare their interest. But thanks for doing so. With that, the only change I will make to the agenda, just to make it smooth running, we have, as you can see, we have agenda item number 17, which is also in private session. Now, what I would intend to do is bring that forward to after the grants to all orgs. So we have the two of those at the end of the communities agenda together, if that's acceptable to everybody. Okay, so with that, what I'll do is move along to agenda item number 2, which is a communities revenue budget position for period 5. And Ian, I hope you're there, because I can see a wee triangle, which makes me worried. So I hope you can hear us, Ian.
Yeah, I'm here, convener. Can you hear me?
Yep.
So here we go. This is the communities revenue budget report for period 5, and that's up to the end of August 2020. The current budget for communities part of the committee is 4.5 million, and the latest projection is an overspend of 868,000. And included within that projection, there are COVID-19 related costs of 997,000, and these will be fully funded from the council's approved COVID-19 budget. excluding these costs, there's a projected underspend of 129,000. Main section of the report to draw your attention to is section 5. That gives you details of the variances responsible for the projected overspend of 868,000, and that's obviously including the COVID costs. So firstly, libraries and museum projected to overspend by 33,000. Included within that projection, there's COVID-19 costs of 42,000, and that's relating to the loss of income when the libraries were closed as a result of the lockdown. Excluding these costs, there's a projected underspend of £9,000, and that's mainly due to property costs. Sports and leisure projected to overspend by 875,000. Included within that is COVID costs of 881,000. There's 951,000 of additional payments have been made to Inverclyde Leisure to help with their cash flow during the lockdown. And there's also a saving of 70,000 for sports waivers. Excluding the COVID-19 costs, there's a projected underspend of £6,000 for sports and leisure, and that's due to minor variances. Community safety is projected to underspend by 32,000, and there's no COVID-19 related costs under community safety. So the majority of the projected underspend within community safety relates to the school crossing patrol or vacancies. Community halls projected to underspend by 8,000. Included within that projection are COVID-19 costs of 74,000, and that's due to a loss of lets income, which is offset by a savings in waivers. Excluding the COVID-19 costs, there's a projected underspend of 82,000, and that's due to underspends in letting officer employee costs and community hubs resources. So the next section of the report to draw your attention to is section 6. And also Appendix 4, that gives you details of the earmarked reserves. The total earmarked reserves for 2021 are 159,000, and we're projecting to spend 106,000 in the current financial year. The expenditure to date is zero, and there's no slippage to report at this time. I'm not requesting any environments at this cycle, so the committee are asked to note projected underspend of 129,000 net of the 997,000 of COVID-19 costs, and happy to take any questions.
Thank you for that, Ian. Open it up to questions first of all. If there's no questions, can we agree the report? Thank you. Can we move along to item number 3, which is the Communities Capital Programme? And is it Hugh? Are you taking us through this, Hugh?
Yeah. Thanks, convener. This report is to give you an update where we are with the capital project across communities and education. The overall budget is projecting for the cost of 20 to 23 in the capital budget. 2.4 gives you where we're sitting at the present moment with the spend and also some of the stuff that we're looking to work forward with. Within the report, you'll see that we're asking for Chief Exec to get approval for accepting partly community facility pitch recycling works as a recommendation. For your note, I'll give you some backgrounds where we have some projects. Lady Alice Bowling Club, and we're working very closely with Lady Alice Bowling Clubs as long as with our ward councillors to try and enhance this project. We've had 6 successful talks in the last couple of days with the centre, and they're now looking to see if they can bring some match funding in to make sure that this project goes forward. We still will have a delay for the project, but we're confident now with the support that the club's getting is that it's possible that this is back on track again. Indoor Bowling Club, as you can remember from previous committee, that was agreed for the tennis to go ahead with additionally £835,000. The second phase application form is now being submitted on the 16th of September, and we're waiting word back from the funder to see if we're successful in that. Leisure pitches and management things, you'll see that within the recycler fund is going ahead, and there's a lot of work starting. Grieve Road Community Facility, again, work is still going on. Wansby Community Facility, the work is still progressing. Winhill Golf Course, the life cycle works. There's now discussions with partners of IL and property services to make sure that the work continues to go ahead. Inverclyde leisure trailing pool has now been agreed at committee as the previous committee. And officers are working with IL to make sure that there's a spec in place to make this process goes forward for work starting sometime next year. Craigend Resource Centre, this is not a capital fund, this is a regeneration capital project. Council is holding as a main partner in the bid 1.1 million. We've now been given an extra £100,000 to support that from Regeneration Capital, given the overall budget now at 2.41, and we'll continue to give you an update on the work. The work is now started on site and the work is starting to progress, and we'll continue to give you an update where we are. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Hugh, and can welcome Lorraine Tinney along from the Telegraph. Welcome, Lorraine. And also, it was remiss of me, I will invite both Jim MacLeod and Natasha in at the end if they've got any comments to our questions at meetings, items. The first question is from Martin. Martin?
Yes, Jim, I want to ask Hugh if he's very optimistic about the tennis bid, the TSIS bid, because if we secured that, that would be very promising for sport in Inverclyde.
Yeah, for yourself, Convener. Yeah, we're hopeful that this will go ahead. We're working very closely now with Sport Scotland. Sport Scotland have obviously had discussions with us before we put the new phase 2 in again. So we're hopeful this should be taken forward, and we're looking for some more communication with them within the coming weeks.
Okay, thanks. And we have a question from Natasha. I'll go to next.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, it was more a comment. It was just to say here, I'm really pleased that Lady Alice has been able to resolve that, because obviously we were quite concerned at the pre-agenda when we thought that there was going to be further issues. So is it okay if we ask, as per usual, with any of our projects to get an update on that? But it is really hopeful, and it sounds like there's progress being made, which is good in this area. So thanks, Jim.
Okay, and obviously I am not great technically, so both Natasha and Jim McLenny, I can actually see the both of them, and they can actually contact me within the chat. It's only Jim MacLeod that probably can't contact me, and I can see Chris McLenny's on the phone as well, so I'm probably getting my McLenny's mixed up, so apologies for that. So I'll quickly go to Jim MacLeod to see if he's got any comments.
No, thank you, Convener.
And I'll go to Chris McLenny if he's got any comments. Chris?
Hi, Jim. How are you? Hi, everybody. No, I've got use of the chat function, Jim, so I'll be sure to let you know if we've got anything to say.
Okay. As always, Chris, I wouldn't expect anything less. So with that, can we agree the recommendations?
Great.
Thank you for that. Can I move on to the Cultural Service Annual Report 2019 to 2020? And we have Alana here. Alana?
Convener, Alana's having connection problems. She just texted me and asked me just to cover this report, if that's okay.
Okay, no problem, Tony.
Okay,
thank you.
So this report is just the annual report for 2019-20, and it's to bring members up to date with the developments and achievements of cultural services over that period. Just your attention's drawn to, I suppose, to section 2.2 that talks about some of the key achievements out of the report, and I'm happy to take any questions on any aspect of the report and hopefully be able to answer them as well.
Right, thank you, Tony. Do we have any questions on the annual Cultural Services Annual Report? Lynn?
Jim, can I come in, please?
What I'll do, Lynn, Jim, I'll make sure you come in at the end of every item. I'll do it on the item of the chat first. So I'll look to see if anybody's on the chat, and then anybody that's on the phone, I'll make sure they get the chance to come in at the end. So I'll bring Lynn in first. Lynn?
Yeah, it's just a comment. It's just a pity Alana's not here. It was just to actually congratulate the library service on their, I'm about to call it Meals on Wheels, but it's not, Books on Wheels. It's just a number of folk locally have really appreciated that service. A lot of our elderly they were isolating at home, really appreciated the fact that they got those books delivered to them and kept them going during lockdown. So I just thought it was worth noting that.
Thanks, Lynn. We'll make sure Tony takes that back to Alana and all our staff to thank us on it.
Thank you.
So can I bring Jim McLeod in now? Jim?
Yeah, it's not in relevance to the actual report from 2019 to 20, which is an excellent report, and it's really good to see that cultural services has done so well, and you can actually see just how well has benefited from the resources that Inverclyde Council continues to put into the service. But I just wondered even if we could, get if it'd be possible just to find out, just how big an impact it's been on the service with COVID-19.
Okay, Tony, you want to take that?
Yeah, I mean, we can certainly, I can bring something back to committee. And I know we've got the Cultural and Communities Recovery Plan, which is well underway, and of course we've had to take a wee step back from that. But certainly that we can bring information back from that, because that does look at the impact COVID and the lockdown has had on cultural services over the piece, and that's a group that Ruth chairs on behalf of the partnership.
Thanks, Tony. Elizabeth, you want to come in?
Thanks, Jim. Yeah, it's just a quick question about linkages between different services and strategies and all that kind of thing. I'm a firm believer that the things that we do culturally with arts and heritage and everything are really helpful at helping people move out of poverty. And I'm just wondering if we make the link strategically between what happens through our cultural services and what our aspirations are in terms of dealing with, addressing and mitigating and doing everything we can to address the situation of poverty that too many people in our community are facing.
Tony?
Yep, I mean, it's a very good point. I think when you look at a lot of, certainly from the council's cultural offer, a lot of the things that did, not just through COVID, but this year are also about dealing with the most vulnerable members of society and getting them to participate, increasing confidence. We obviously report things through our CDIP as well on that, but certainly when you do look at certainly the council's offer, it is all about participation and getting people who are normally not engaged through our cultural services offer, and that happens in schools as well. So, but we do try and make the linkages, but as a service, we're always trying to that is our focus. It's about participation and inclusion more than anything else, I would say, for our cultural offer, I suppose. So, but we do. Obviously, it's difficult to make the explicit links, but we understand where some people can't engage in other aspects of the service. They're happy to engage through cultural services.
Thank you, Tony. Is that okay, Elizabeth? And I suppose on that, I was at a meeting this morning with the COSLA cultural section, and really an awful lot of what Elizabeth was saying, what Tony was saying, and what Alana and our services have been doing resonates with what has been happening in Scotland. So I think we're very much in tune with what's happening with the rest of Scotland. And if there's no other questions, just finally from me, if we could pass on our congratulations to Myra Mains for being the first book club hero. I think that was book bug hero. So if you can say to Alana, it's mentioned at committee, and just again pass on our congratulations to Myra. I'm sure we're all agreed in that.
Well done, thank you.
Can I move along to agenda item number 5, which is the school crossing patrols? Hugh, you're going to start us off with that?
Yeah, for yourself, convener. This report is to seek approval for a review to be carried out across the school crossing patrols across the authority. Within the summary, it gives you a background that we haven't done any summary full review of our XPs in a number of years to match the policy and guidance. 2009 was the last time we had a full endorsed look at the process that we have. Due to a number of changes through the schools, housing stock's been reallocated. We're now asking for committee approval to bring in an external consultant to review all sites to see if they're fit for purpose, but also to make sure it fits with the full guidance that is out there. Western Scotland Partnership have a guidance set out by Scottish Government to support all XPs and shield crossing patrollers. The key thing that we want to do, and you'll see that within one of the recommendations, is to make it's a local policy decision that's been made a number of years ago. Essential sites will be replaced with a specific change in situations. What that means is that policy says that we can't move any sites due to either the site being closed or there's a set of traffic lights been set up in that place due to the old policy. So our recommendation is once we look at a full review by an independent consultant to look at all sites across the authority, that we bring a full report back to education communities before any decisions are made to take this forward. I'm happy to take any questions.
Okay, Hugh, and we'll make sure that is explicit in the recommendations.
Yes, that will be amended.
Okay, right. In that case, I'll open it up to questions. Tommy McVeigh, first of all. Tommy, you know I love to hear your dulcet tones, but you'll need to take yourself off mute.
Sorry, Jim. Sorry about that. When I read the report, I mean, it raised quite a few questions. Potentially, are we going to lose 16 sites? Where are the sites? How will it affect Ward 7? What about the Walk to School initiative? What impact on that if parents maybe don't want their kids walk to school if there's not a crossing? But the kind of main thing that jumped out to me when I looked at the recommendations was that there's no distinct lack of consultation. I don't think we can just force these things through. I think they're very sensitive. I think we need to consult parents, carers via the parent councils and bring them along with us rather than just forcing these through, for want of a better word. And I absolutely understand that changing demographics require we'll look at these things, but based on the recommendations alone today, I can't support these recommendations without some commitment to consult with parent councils, etc. And I have an additional recommendation which would make it possible. Obviously, we want to throw it out for discussion.
Okay, we could come back to that, Tommy. Even obviously, we'll put in the additional recommendation with regard to come back to this committee after any independent review has been taking place. But I'll put that on hold there, and I'll bring other people in, and I'll let you come back in again before the end, Tommy, to see if that satisfies you or not. So, Natasha, first of all.
Yeah, thank you. So I just wanted to kind of come in and about the sites that we've got. So my belief is that this isn't to try and stop sites from being used, it's rather to make sure that sites can be covered when they're needing to be covered. So, for example, we've got a lot of school crossing patrollers who aren't able to work because they're off sick or whatnot. So because of that, we have to have other people covering the sites. Currently, my understanding is that because we don't have what's proposed in this paper in place, it makes it really difficult to have that cover put in place. Is that correct?
For yourself, convener, yes, that's correct. We've got 4 priorities across the sites. So priority 1 means that it's a crucial site for us. Priority 2 is a second priority, and then right down to 4. So if we have any sicknesses or illnesses across the operational, is that we would move people from 4 and 3 to make sure that our key sites are covered as a priority. But we will also communicate with the schools before we do that and tell them that we've achieved that. But we have got vacancies at the moment, and they are out for recruitment at the present moment, and hopefully we will fill that. But again, because of the demographic age of quite a lot of the staff, we have a lot of absences, and we have to move in a quick, make sure that we're safe, that the young people can get to the priority sites.
So just to clarify, this is a combination of making sure that we're not posting people at sites that are no longer used, but it's also to ensure that safety is maintained on the busier routes, and it's also to allow us to respond to changes in demand as and when they arise. So this isn't trying to restrict the service, this is doing the absolute opposite.
Yeah, we're trying to enhance the service to make sure that we've got a policy in place that's fit for purpose, and making sure that we can cover the crucial sites that we've got, but also taking into consideration sites have reduced with the numbers of young people crossing.
Okay, thank you, Hugh. Thanks, Chair.
Okay, thanks, Natasha. Jim McElhenny.
Thanks, convener. Yeah, I've got some concerns regarding this report as well. Yeah, it's fine to conduct a review to ensure that we're optimising the service and we're utilising our resources as best we can. But when we go down the policy route of, for example, acceptable walking routes, etc., these are done in accordance with things like school crossing patrollers in place. Now, the bit I'm objecting or concerns over is when the paper talks about a substantial change, for example, a reduction in footfall or a reduction in kids. To me, if there's a need for a school crossing patroller, whether it be 100 kids crossing or one kid, that need's still there. And if you take away the school crossing patroller, then that crossing then becomes by default less safe. So I'm pleased to say that any report will be coming back to the committee, but things like what I've just alluded to there, it rings alarm bells for general safety, particularly the last report done in 2009. There's more and more cars on the road now. They're bigger, more powerful SUVs, the people carriers, etc. So kids are maybe not getting the same sight of, you know, the crossing. Is it safe to cross between parked cars? Or since the deregulation of parking as well. There's cars parking on double yellow lines, parking on corners, parking on pavements. It's a nightmare for kids some areas round about schools.
Okay.
Yeah, for yourself, convener. I mean, I think the XPs is just one part of the road safety mechanism. We have school road safety officers attending all our schools to make sure that young people are trained in the safety of road safety across our statement. And we work very closely with our school estates. We also work very closely with our management in the schools to make sure that there's anything highlighted, either through the parent councils or anything regarding the demand of more traffic. And you're aware, in certain sites across the authority, we have got a demand in more traffic, which is causing us major concerns. The review will help us with this because they will have an up-to-date independent review of what the volume of traffic is at each school.
Okay, thanks, Hugh. I'm going to invite Lynn to come in. Lynn?
Yeah, just to start, I should have declared an interest at the start, but I have a family member who's a crossing patroller. Very good one. So it was just a thought. I don't think it impacted my decision, but clearly I've got a bit of inside information when he fills me in the details. Just a couple of things. Just from the paper, obviously I see one of the recommendations is to employ a consultant. It's just I'm actually just questioning the order of things. So we're asked to actually make changes here as well as including a consultant. Should it not be the consultant does the job, it comes back to committee and then we make a decision. My concern is we've got recommendations in there, kind of prejudging what the consultant's going to say. So that's my first concern, and also maybe just a bit of reassurance that consultant will look at clearly risk versus just basic numbers. So I'll give you a scenario. So our crossing patroller at Tower Drive retired and he's not being replaced. Now, I think when I questioned that, it said that the numbers were low, but the numbers might be low, but they're crossing between 6 buses that come to the high school every morning. So although the numbers are low, the risk must be, which is another way to get high volume. But so I'm just having just want to get a bit of reassurance that the risk aspects, because I don't think we can put a cost on somebody's safety. So we need to look at safety rather than just the numbers. The other thing is obviously is to explore we've got, is this being prompted by the lack of recruitment and the fact that we've got a number of vacancies? And so what is the reason that we're struggling to recruit our crossing patrollers? And is it time now to look at that? So clearly we've got support staff in our schools. Can we look at maybe looking at some of the support staff and giving them an addition to their job, which is they can go out and cover the streets leading up to the school prior to them starting and pay them a bit extra. So can we actually look at that? And my final point is there's no cost implications in this report. So clearly we're looking to recruit a consultant. I would have expected to see some sort of cost implications in the report, but there isn't any.
Okay.
So thank you.
Okay, thanks, Lynn. I think that was about 3 points there, Hugh.
Yeah, obviously on recruitment, it's very keen, is that we are got an open recruitment at the moment. We are struggling and we're looking at new ways. We're trying to get into all supermarkets. We've been in all the schools. We spoke to our colleagues in education to get the who are responsible for people in the schools at work out during the mornings and the lunch times. So we are aware of that. I think on the policy for yourself, convener, was that when I came in, I've looked at it and I've been trying to get this through for a number of years to make sure I can get this changed. I think there's a need to look at the policy in depth. The policy against the guidance doesn't match up because it's so long. And this is not about removing any sites. This is about making sure that the sites are fit for purpose, but making sure also that the road safety is paramount to what we want to do. But the key thing that we are doing is at the moment we're finding that a lot of, due to some of our vacancies, we're really struggling some places to remove, and we have to move the ones who are not scoring so high. We always do an independent review before we move anybody. So if there's any issues at all across any of the crossings, we would go out and do a review, and that will be a score mechanism to see we're still meeting the criteria. But the criteria changes, and I think one of the biggest challenges that I face is with the policy condition is moving the policy condition, because the policy was done in 2009, and that lets us look at moving people to a site that needs more support at a certain times. But I understand your views, and I'm happy to take them on board.
Okay, thanks for that. I'll take in Elizabeth Robertson next.
Thanks, Jim. I know that other people have indicated that they want to come in with some changes, but I just feel, just on the back of what Hugh said there, that the only thing that mentions the policy is the first recommendation about moving one condition from the policy, when actually what I'm getting a sense of is that we need to have a recommendation that says we need to review the entire policy and actually refresh that in its entirety rather than merely taking out one condition. And so I would suggest that in addition to anything else that anybody might say regarding this paper, that we amend the recommendations in terms of what we're going to do with the policy.
Through yourself, I think the key thing for that is, and that's a crucial point, the key thing that we're asking to move is so that we can move staff about. But once we get the recommendations from the independent consultant, then we might need to look at the full policy and bring it back to committee.
Okay, with that, I'm going to invite, Jim's McLeod's obviously been a heavily campaigner on road safety. Jim, have you got anything you want to add in this?
Yes, thanks, Jim. Couple of things. I think it's already been touched on, obviously, about consultation. I think that's vital, and I think it's something that we haven't always been too clever at in the past, and consulting with school parent councils or community councils when patrol crossers have been removed, that sometimes they found out towards the latter end, and then voiced their concerns then, and certainly that was the case in Coenbray when children were going over to New York and to St Michael's. That was one of the patrol crossers that was raised with me a few years ago, and the other time was Marlock Avenue with children crossing to St Francis as well. So I think it's really important that we do have that consultation, not just within the council and ourselves, but with organisations out there. I think that's very important. So regarding you're right, Jim, about road safety, it's something that's always been high up with myself. It's been high in my agenda, and I think the 20 mile an hour policy we're trying to push within the SNP group, and I know the council are going to bring a report back to us looking into that. But I think that's paramount here. I think that goes hand in hand. It's not just about patrol crossers, but it's about all the other things that goes with this. Patrol crossers are really, really important and we must continue to keep them. But I think we've got to look at a little bit what Elizabeth said there about looking at whole policy. So I think the 20 mile an hour policy about bringing that into our communities, so as there are safer walking areas, is really important, and we take that on board too. Thanks.
Okay, thanks, Jim. I'm going to let Hugh back in, and I've said I'm going to let Tommy in eventually as well, but what I would hope to do is sum up, to see if what I sum up is okay for Tommy and Elizabeth. But and the question was on cost implications, Hugh. That was from Lynn.
Yeah, sorry, Councillor, I forgot that one. At the moment, we're out to get some costings, but that would be within the core budget of community safety. As you'll see, I've got another spend on community safety at the present moment, so that money will go towards that. I don't think it'll be anything. I think we're using a consultant who's used in other local authorities, who's been recommended. But we're at the moment we're doing free quotes on that, and we haven't got a full cost at the moment, but we are working on that. Just on the communication, I think the key thing for us, I think it's paramount that we do consult with our wider communities and our parent councils and the pupils. Once we have a full review carried out, I think we can't do that until we know exactly what the consultant's saying. I think one of the key things for us at the moment is even things like Councillor MacLeod talked about traffic lights, the new Act. If you put traffic lights in, that's a vacancy then automatically for an XP worker. So we need to make sure that we're communicating across all road safety elements of the review. But we will communicate with community councils and the school councils once we know what the report's telling us. But again, this is not about a saving, this is to enhance the policy and the guidance to match it.
Okay, thanks, Hugh. Before letting Tommy and Elizabeth back in, if wish to, I'll just sum up. So what we're actually saying is the extra recommendation is obviously there to make sure it comes back to this committee. And we're not just removing crossing patrols, because I think that was a fear of all members from all parties. And what we're actually saying, taking in consideration Tommy's bit that you've just touched upon there about consultation, although we've not explicitly said that in any recommendations, that goes without saying that we'd be consulting in ending changes to crossing patrols that affects a particular school. Going back to Elizabeth's point, obviously it is what you actually say, you get the policy and then it falls from the policy and not the other way about. So hopefully what Hugh has said to you is it has sort of given you that reassurance that that's what is going to happen. But up to you, as we've had the reassurance from our officers. I think it's probably covered all points that's been raised. However, I can see Tommy's wanting in. I'll let Tommy come in first to see if that does.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks, Jim. It's just disappointing that wasn't in the original recommendations. But whether it's this report or next report, I think it's key that we make a commitment to discuss with parents and carers, and I would still like to move an additional recommendation.
Elizabeth, are you happy with the information you've had?
I think it's tidier if we get it noted in the recommendations, to be honest. Not to be sort of obstreperous about it, but it's from a point of view of knowing what we have actually agreed. It's not just that we've agreed the recommendations that are noted there, that we have made amendments to them.
That's a good point. Before I let you in, Tommy, can I ask you to actually say, and it will help Gwen and Sharon as well, to put in the line what you would propose as the extra recommendation?
For yourself, recommended would be that a full review of the consultancy work will be brought back to education committees for comment and action. We can tweak the words, but that's the kind of thing that we'd be looking for. And a full public consultancy will be carried out with stakeholders once we have a full review.
Okay, so it's Tommy. If that doesn't suit you, I don't know what would, but if you still feel the need to come in with something, please feel free.
No, Jim, put this forward because it only gets confusion, and this is what I've written, and I'll just like to put it forward formally. Where it's applies to this report or a further report, I just want it documented. So my additional recommendation would be that relevant councils and community councils must be consulted prior to any school crossing patrol or site being removed, and the result of the consultation will be reported to this committee for the final determination on whether or not the crossing site is to be removed. Thank you.
Okay. I do think Hugh's line covers that, but Ruth, will you want to come in?
What I would say, the whole purpose of bringing this forward is that the last information that we've got is from 2009. What we have to be, sorry, that's my phone going. We have to be very clear about the purpose of this. It's to get the right to get crossing patrollers at the safest places, and we've got to have some sort of rationale and ability to do that. And as Hugh says, sometimes when we're having to drop a crossing patroller, parents don't always understand that that's because that's the one of the safer crossings that we're using, and actually we're protecting the least safe when we're using lots of different criteria. What I would say is, why would we not just put out a consultation to parents about crossing? Because we're talking about where there are sites and where there aren't sites, and I think that's what this paper is addressing. I think the issue has been established sites will remain in place except where there's a significant change in circumstances. I think what officers were putting forward is actually, we want to review the totality of this, because there may be some sites that actually might be hitting some sort of thresholds that we need to also look at. There may be things out there that parents are saying, actually, we wish there was a road crossing patroller here. There hasn't historically been one, but actually we put new houses. There's new houses there, so that's more difficult. So what I would say is, looking at the recommendation, is actually to say we will consult with all stakeholders on this issue. What I would say is perhaps not. If you ask parents, do you want to keep your road crossing patroller? Of course they will, you know, so that's possibly a consultation where we get less valuable information. But what I would say and commit to do is to undertake a consultation across the whole school community on this matter prior to bringing it back to the next, well, not the next committee, we'll not get it done at that time, but prior to bringing it back when it comes back to committee. Okay, thanks, Ruth. Tommy, again, I know you've said that's. I think what you're saying is virtually what Ruth's saying. But if you want to, you know, I don't know what your amendment will now be against with regard to what Ruth has said that is going to be added to recommendations. But it's up to you. But I would think the recommendations virtually covers everything that you're asking for. Yeah, I would like to include the recommendations, convener. Yeah. Right, so this is where I'm a wee bit confused. Are you happy with Ruth's reassurances, or are you pressing ahead with your amendment? Yeah, I would like my additional recommendations to be included, or additional amendment to be included in the recommendations, yeah.
Convener, can I come in just one thing?
Yes.
Yeah, obviously, if that's a recommendation across all sites, if Transport or Roads decide to put in a sighting or traffic measures in, then we would be removing that too from that site. So we need to be careful on what we're asking for here, because if there's a talk at the sheriff's shop at the moment, they're going to put Pelican crossings there, and that will remove a controller from that site, but there will be a safety measure put in place. So we need to be careful on what we're asking for here. If we need to go and consult about that. Right. Although I've not got Tommy's amendment in front of us, I think unless anybody else has got anything to say, we just go ahead with either the assurances that Ruth and our officers have given, which I believe covers everything that Tommy's said, without the need to go to an amendment. But if Tommy's forcing an amendment due, then it goes to a vote on it. Yeah.
Check a chat, convener.
Oh, sorry, Elizabeth. Yes, you can come back in.
I think Natasha wanted in as well. Sorry.
Sorry, no, I just put in about my declaration. I forgot that my stepdad's a school crossing patroller. Don't really think of it at the beginning of the meeting, so I just put in a declaration, but thanks, Elizabeth, anyway.
Sorry. Just again, sorry, Q, I'm not picking on you this afternoon, but I know Tommy's going to go ahead with his vote on his amendment, but I don't think the issue of what we're doing with the whole policy was addressed in the revision that you articulated to us a few minutes ago. So I would be keen that whatever we take forward also includes that, I have to say.
That's noted.
Okay, so we're in agreement with that. So I hate to go for a vote because I think it's all encompassed. I think we're all singing off the same hymn sheet here. But Tommy, if you want, what we'll actually do is I'm actually moving the recommendations with the addition that we've talked about for the last 15 minutes, 20 minutes. Tommy, if you want to actually tell us again so that Sharon's got a clear note of what your amendment is, it'd be much appreciated.
Yeah, thanks, convener. Gwen's already got a note of it, Jim. I'll certainly read it again. Relevant parent councils and community councils must be consulted prior to any school crossing patroller site being removed, and the result of the consultation will be reported to this committee for the final determination on whether or not the crossing site is to be removed.
Ruth, you want to come back in? Are you worried about that amendment?
I'm sorry, I was struggling to hear it actually.
Okay.
Convener, will I come in at this point, if that's okay, through you, Chair?
Can I raise a point of order, Convener?
Can we just step back a wee bit? Right. So what I've got, because I've not got, the only thing I'm looking at is stuff through the chat. So the only bit I've let Elizabeth Robertson come back in. I've got the council leader want to come back in. So unless, and I've now got Councillor McElhenney want to raise a point of order. So we're getting into a wee bit of mess over this here. So Gwen, if you want to give legal advice at this point in time, you take precedent over anybody else, providing it is legal advice.
Point of order should actually take precedence over the standing orders, but I'll bow to your convenership.
Right, okay. Thank you, Chris.
Convener, through you, Convener, I simply wanted to clarify exactly what is on the table, because there has been support of the recommendation with one amendment. There's been Councillor McVeigh's amendment, and also Councillor Robertson has also come in with an amendment. So before we can go to the point of order, but before there's any votes, I think we actually have to be clear on exactly what the votes are, what's agreed and what are the amendments, and then to do the voting accordingly. Okay, thanks, Gwen. Now, before I let MD in, I'm going to take Councillor McElhenney in because it is a point of order he's raised. Chris?
The report seemed clear to me, and the answers from officials from members of the committee seemed concise to me. So I just don't think it's appropriate that because perhaps officers don't like the direction of political travel the committee may be going on, that officers continue to come back into the debate. The debate's a political debate between members. I think you have moved recommendations which are clear and concise, and Tommy's moved an amendment that's clear and concise. And just because officers, albeit Gwen's right to raise any legal concerns, but just because officers may think, well, things may be difficult, i.e. we need to consult over remove traffic lights, etc., those shouldn't be material considerations in the debate in terms of putting Tommy's amendment to a vote.
Okay, so the only question we have now is whether or not Councillor Robertson is happy with the answer she's got from both Hugh and from Ruth. So this is a question specifically for Councillor Robertson of whether or not she's happy enough with the added information she's been given.
I certainly wouldn't like Councillor McVeigh to not be able to go forward with his amendment, so I'm going to respectfully ask him if he would add my part about the policy onto his amendment so that we can proceed.
Yes, convener, I'll be happy with that.
Okay. So now what we've got is, now you've got me painted into a corner because I'll let Councillor McCabe in. Sorry, Stephen, I forgot you were wanting to comment.
Yeah, I mean, I think it would be helpful if we actually were clear about, in a sense, what we were voting on. my understanding in terms of the discussion we've had in relation to the existing recommendations is that you're seeking, convener, that there be no change to any of the established sites at this point in time, no removal, permanent removal of street crossing patrollers at any of the established sites until the review is completed. And the review would be reported back to this committee, and following the report back to this committee, there would be a review, there would be a consultation on the outcome of the review, which would then again subsequently be reported back to committee, and there potentially would be a need for a review of the overall policy. Now, I think the amendment actually, without the addition of Councillor Robertson's request for consultation, is actually, doesn't actually deal with the overall review. It seems to be asking that in every case that where there's a proposal to remove a crossing patroller, there is a consultation with the schools, and that is then reported back to the committee, and the committee makes a decision. To some extent, that goes a wee bit against having a policy. If we're basically going to be making a decision on a case-by-case basis, absolutely, I think it's part of any policy. There should be consultation with schools and wider stakeholders. But if the committee is going to make the decision in each and every case, what's the point of having a policy?
Thanks for that, Stephen. But I mean, we're at a situation now that both Tommy and Elizabeth want to press ahead with their amendment. So what you've actually said is, obviously I've seen Hugh nodding his head as that, is what ostensibly the recommendation is to the committee. Tommy and Elizabeth have come in with a joint amendment now, and really that's what we've got to vote on.
Convener, through you, convener, to clarify, if we are moving to vote, you, the convener, you are supporting the recommendations.
Yep.
With an addition that a report is brought back to the committee before any decisions are made with regards to the removal of any patrol crossing. Can I just clarify that that is what you're...
Yeah, and with the added,
that is it. That's
with the
agreed.
added bit, yeah, with the added bit that it would go out to public any changes would go out to public consultation, or out to consultation rather than public consultation.
Out to consultation. Okay, so to clarify, you are proposing to support the recommendations with two additions, that a report is brought back to committee following the outcome of the consultant's review, and before any decisions are made to remove any crossing, and also any changes required to go to consultation.
Yeah.
So that's what's proposed.
Yes.
Okay. And Councillor McVeigh, can I just clarify, your wish is to add on this amendment to what has been said, or do you wish to change? Do you want to swap your proposal for the add-on that you want a further amendment just to add on to what I've just said there? Is that correct? We have the recommendations.
I have the recommendations, and add what
we have a report coming back.
No,
we have changes to go to consultation.
Well, I think we're muddying the waters here. There's 4 recommendations up.
Yes.
And I've put a further one up. Now.
So you're the 4 recommendations plus 1 more. So we have different add-ons.
Yes. So let's keep it simple. A lot of what I don't disagree with some of what Councillor Cotty is saying, but I'm not going to muddy the waters.
Councillor Clougherty, through you, convener, would you like to come in? I think it's important we clarify exactly what we're voting on.
I'm quite happy with what I've proposed, and it's up to Tommy and Elizabeth to actually see whether or not what I've proposed resonates with them and they agree with that, and it sort of ticks the boxes that they've been looking for. And I understand, Tommy, I understand that you have done your bit on the back of the papers itself, so I understand that. And what we've done is we've added that today, right? So I understand where you're coming from. I do. And obviously your views and Elizabeth's views are probably the same as all elected members that they were a wee bit worried about this. So I understand where you're coming from. But quite clearly, what you've actually got is whether or not what is now being proposed covers your amendment, or if you still want to go to that amendment. And I think that is where we're in danger of getting muddied, or whether or not I am doing it as the proposal with the additions, and you're amending the proposals from that, and it's what you're amending is the problem. And I know we're getting really muddy here, but I will let Elizabeth back in. I know it's not usual because we've called for the vote, but given that Elizabeth is one of the people behind the amendment, I'll let her back in.
I think we are getting very muddy, and I don't think this is a show, to be honest. It's the recommendations in the paper have not been clear enough. They have not been clear enough, and they've probably led to a lot of what's happening here this afternoon. But to suggest there are things that are not in those recommendations that really need to be there, and they're not all covered, Jim, in what you're proposing, which is seeming to be a kind of proposal just so we don't have a vote. But there's nothing wrong with us having a vote about this. You know, it's an entirely valid thing that the recommendations as set out aren't what we as or what some of the members of the council don't like, and we should be able to have a vote on that, and it shouldn't be an issue.
That is fine, Elizabeth. Can I just say it's a wee bit unfair because my group has got the exact same concerns as probably every other group. So it is not just that I'm doing this to stop a vote. As you know, the political process is I'll go through my group with anything that's there, and it's my group that I've also raised the concerns that both you and Tommy and other people have raised as well. So it's not just me saying, right, how do I avoid a vote? If a vote comes, so be it. But just to be quite clear, it is not to avoid a vote. And with that, we'll go to the vote.
Through you, Convener, we have a motion by the convener to support the recommendations with the add-on that a report is brought back to committee following the outcome of the consultants' review before any decisions are taken to change or remove the existing crossing controls, and any changes will require to go to consultation. We have an amendment by Councillor McVeigh to support the recommendations with a further amendment being added on to the existing recommendations. That's the recommendations which do not include Councillor Clockerty's add-on. So it's the 1, 2, 3, 4 bullets plus the following additional amendment. Relevant parent councils and community councils must be consulted prior to any school crossing patroller site being removed, and the result of the consultation will be reported to this committee for the final determination on whether or not the crossing site is to be removed, and further, there will be a review of the entire policy.
Okay.
So, as mentioned by Councillor Robertson, the review of the policy was mentioned by Councillor Robertson. So we're now moving to a vote, and I'm going to take this by roll call, and I'm going to ask if the councillor supports the convener's motion or Councillor McVeigh's amendment.
Just motion or amendment.
Motion or amendment, or to abstain. So I'm going to start with the Provost. Motion or amendment, or to abstain. Motion. Wiener.
Motion.
Motion. Councillor MacLeod.
Amendment.
Amendment. Councillor McCabe.
Motion.
Motion. Councillor Chris McElhenney.
Amendment.
Amendment. Councillor Jim McElhenney.
Amendment.
Amendment. Councillor McVeigh. Amendment. Councillor Murphy.
Motion.
Motion. Councillor Quinn.
Amendment.
Amendment. Councillor Quinn.
Yep.
Amendment.
Amendment, sorry.
Thank you. Councillor Robertson.
Amendment.
And Councillor Wilson.
Motion.
Motion. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We have 5 votes for the motion. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And 6 votes for the amendment. So I declare that Councillor McVeigh's amendment is carried.
And it would not be our intention to take it to full council because okay, so with that, can we move along to agenda item number 6, which is the Regeneration Capital Grant Fund? I'll let Hugh start off with that. Hugh?
Stop, hang on a minute. Sorry, Councillor MacLeod, I think he said that he would be leaving this part of the meeting. Can we just confirm he's in the lobby?
Still here.
Right, okay.
Just about to move him into the lobby, convener.
If we can just hold off just a second, thank you.
Councillor MacLeod is now in the lobby.
Thanks, Commissioner. We are with Regeneration Capital Fund Round 8 Project 21 to 2. Purpose of the report is to give education communities an update where we are with several applications was made previously to stage 1 applications. Stage 1's applications were put in on behalf of the council in partnership with other bodies. So stage 1 was put in where Inverclyde's Menshed, Park Lead Gardens, Project Branston Out, Greenock Town Centre, King Street, King George Building Community Centre and Scouts Facility in Bank Street. 4 of these applications were successful to go to stage 2, and these were King George Building in Glasgow, Greenock Town Centre and Inverclyde Menshed and Partley. What that means is that these government regeneration capital funds asked for more information to put in a stage 2 application with more details on the overall projects. That was given to consideration by CMT, and due to a number of things, which you've seen within the report, only 2 recommendations have been taken forward at the present moment. Recommendation was that the Greenock Town Centre project does not go forward to stage 2 due to the fact that the Oak Mall has now been sold and they're working closely with another partner who's not able to commit to the additional funding. Project for the Menshed was agreed to go forward to support the overall project. We're submitting that on Thursday, and that would be that project would go ahead to stage 2. The other project which was asked to be deferred was Branston Out Community Facility, or Branston Out Facility in Port Glasgow. The reason was that was asked to defer. At this stage, there is no confirmation of match funding for this overall project. The application was made for 1.1 million, and the overall project for the Branston Out is 1.6 million. And at this time, in CMT felt, and senior officers felt, that there was no match funding in place to meet the guidelines for this. The other one, it was recommended to go forward, was the King George Community Hub in Port Glasgow. And part of that would be to relocate the Clune Park Roseau Centre into the King George's building if the grant has been successful. Close Clune Park Roseau Centre and transfer the staff and all the revenue costs to that site if agreed by Scottish Government for additional funding. I'm happy to take any questions.
Yeah, thanks, Hugh. Hugh, I think we probably, before we open up to questions, and I expect we'll get quite a few questions, obviously the one that stands out is partly branching out, right? So partly branching out, and I know Councillor MacLeod is now in the lobby, but there's a number of members who fully support the partly branching out project, and it's probably quite dear to a lot of people's hearts. Can you elaborate a wee bit more on the idea of why we are not supporting that? Because it seems to, and I'm sure it will seem to a lot, that it's one of the projects that we as a council would want to be seen supporting. So can you tell us about how it's got to be spent in a year, and tell us a wee bit about whether or not the project itself is a council project or whether it's a partly branching out project? And then I'm sure other members will want to come in the back of what you're actually saying, and I will certainly want to come in again as well.
Okay, thanks, Convener. So just give you the background of Regeneration Capital. All Regeneration Capital funds have to be led by the local authorities. So any projects that we put in has to be a partnership with the council being the lead organisation. So branching out, we have had discussions with them about the stage one. We think it's a very worthwhile project, and we've already had lots of communication with them. We think it's there, but what we're asking for within the paper is a deferral. And the reason it's a deferral is that within their overall business plan, they are looking for 1.6 million. Okay, the application to Regeneration Capital stage one was 1.1 million, with external funding been looking for 400,000 pound match funding. Right, at the present moment, there is no match funding in place to support this organisation. Okay, so the risk to the council is that if we are successful within the bid, then there's a liability on the council for the uncommitted money of £540,000 to support this over 1.6 million project. So CMT and senior management team felt there was a bit of risk here, or too much of a risk at the moment, to put this forward. What we have committed to branching out is to support them to put an allocation in next year at round 8 of the application, right, to make sure that this is fit for purpose. The also risk on it too is for anything is that you need to make sure that you have recurring costs and making sure that the organisation is fit for purpose, which we think it is. But myself and Craig went through the full accounts and business study, and we feel that the best way at the present moment would be, because there's no money in situ, would be to refer it for 1 year. They are looking at applying for a number of grants. They have put in one for the big lottery. But again, on a capital spend, the capital spend only gives in £30,000. So it's about the capital, it's not about the running costs. And the biggest concern that we have at the moment is how do we find the additional money to support this very worthwhile project. And we're not saying it's not worthwhile, but we're saying there's a serious gap there for the money that we've not got allocated. Just give you a wee bit of background. As you know, Craig N's been very successful in that, but Craig N had money in place and secure before Regeneration Capital agreed any funding. And Regeneration Capital Fund from Scottish Government are looking for match funding. And we've had discussions with branching out about them putting in for full amount and see how it goes. They're a wee bit nervous about that because they think it could be knocked back. But and I had the conversations this morning again with them. So that's where we really are at the present moment, and the decision was made to not to do that. And very similar to the Greenock Town Centre one, there isn't the match funding in place to support the Greenock Town Centre. I'm happy to take any questions.
Okay, Hugh, before I come back in again, wax lyrical, I'm going to let the other members come in and they know what I've got. So I've got Councillor Quinn first and then Councillor Murphy. Councillor Quinn, Lynn?
Yeah, thanks. So I just want to raise some points under the King George building. So just to, when I actually read this report, I was somewhat surprised because when the only information I had about the King George building was being an environment and regeneration project. So apparently there's a steering group. There was a steering group set up within Port Glasgow to discuss the King George building and its future plans. So on that committee, there was Councillor Mackenzie, who is, as you'll know, is the chair of the Port Glasgow Regeneration Forum, and that was based on a steer from the Port Glasgow Regeneration Forum that look at saving. There was also a couple of representations from Council, Anna McClintock, Audrey Galloway. There was rep from Port Glasgow Community Councils. There was representation from the Masonic Lodge, and also Rigart sat on that committee. So I'm just trying to understand how can we have gone from having a steering group about the building to suddenly the direction is totally changed. Now, when this application had gone in from the council, the second application, because clearly I was under the impression there was an original application, but actually in the report it states that there was an original application by Rigart, but Hugh, as you've just mentioned, that actually Rigart didn't put in an application, it has to be the council. So the original application was a council application with Rigart being a partner, and it looks as if Rigart is no longer the partner. So my concerns are, a few concerns, but mainly none of the people in that steering group were aware that there's been a change in direction. Not even our own council officers. So our property services people didn't even know about this new application and a change in direction. So I'm actually quite surprised that that's the case. Also, there is no mention in this document that the building's actually a quarter owned by the Lodge. The Lodge owns a quarter of this building. There is no mention in this document about how that's going to work. So actually the Lodge themselves are questioning, under this new project, what about the heads of terms that were originally? So with the project with Rigarts, they agreed to heads of terms and how it would work with the Lodge owning a quarter of the building. So we can't go ahead without them on board, which is a huge concern. And also, in the aspect of this fund, it actually talks about any of the projects has to be transformational change with strong regeneration outcomes. I'm actually struggling to see why a move of one community centre into a new building is actually delivering that transformational change with regards to regeneration. So there's just so many questions that I have on this, and unfortunately a lot of the members of the steering group also have significant questions about that. I mean, not to go on about Rigarts, but Rigarts are award winners in terms of transformational change and regenerating communities, and we've seemed to have just cut them out here in not a great way, I'm afraid. We should have been biting our hands off to be part of this project, and we've, in effect, disregarded their input. So I know there's a lot in there, but it's just to actually try and voice some of those huge concerns I have.
Okay. Yeah, for yourself, convener. Obviously, the situation with Rigarts, unfortunately, we were asked to put they had put 2 bids in. Okay, it's the council that leads all the bids. It was in partnership with Rigarts. Unfortunately, 2 bids were knocked back. I was asked by senior management to look at what we could do to support the King George building. I do agree that due to timescales, that some of the communication has not been there. But I've reported this back to the relevant people from my side, and have decided that we would try and put something in to make sure that we could use Clune Park Resource Centre. Clune Park Resource Centre, as you're aware, is in a repopulation area and is regeneration, which is a good community facility. But again, it's been because of what's going on in the area. We have got some information from the recent locality plans showing that there is a need for a lower community facility in Port Glasgow. And to be honest, that was one of the reasons that was put in. And I take on board your communications and the lack of communications. The timescales are very tight for us to get this in. And we had put that in, not surmising that it would go stage to stage 2. And this has been through a number of community CMT meetings and senior management meetings to see where we are at the present moment. So I do take in hand that the communications were good. I have also written to Recruitment and explained that and apologised for any communications. But the Recruitment project deemed by Scottish Government that they wouldn't support that. So we were looking at a better option to make sure that we can utilise the building in King George and make sure it doesn't get into mothball and trying to finish the building. As you can imagine, is the money that was already been signposted by the council has been fully endorsed and we've spent more money on it. Your point about officers of property not being aware of it, officers of property are very supportive on this and we're aware of stage 1 and stage 2 applications made, and maybe not everybody, but everybody was working on it. I think the key thing about we're still engaging at the moment to go back and look at the heads of terms of the Masonic. As you can aware, that because of the timescale, we haven't engaged yet until we see what happens with the process. This facility will be managed by Inverclyde Ledger, so it'll be an Inverclyde Ledger Council facility because that's who manages Queen Park Resource Centre, and that would be further discussions on as we go forward. Happy to take any questions.
Okay, Hugh, I don't know if you've answered all Lynn's questions there, but what I'm going to do is let other people in first and then give Lynn an opportunity to come back in. Is that okay, Lynn? There's quite a lot. Are you wanting to come in right away?
I'm really struggling. I mean, in terms of the key point is that you've not got the Masonic Lodge with you yet, so I'm really concerned that you're in here with a project and the Masonic Lodge is not with you, and it can't actually happen without them. You can't put Inverclyde Leisure in that building because a quarter of it is owned by someone else. The other point is, can you tell me why Recruitment's project was the reason the funders gave for Recruitment not getting the Recruitment partnership proposal not going ahead? What was the reason given?
The reason given the Scottish Government felt that they needed a wider community asset.
Okay, and the question about the lodge, Hugh?
The lodge is something that we're working with College and Property. We haven't engaged with them yet, but we will be engaging with them.
Okay, I'm going to let other members in, Lynn.
Sorry, Jim, I need to question that as well about the reason. The reason wasn't, I actually got a note of the reason why the funders rejected it, and it's not the reason stated. That's my concern. So Rig Arts has been told that the reason is they didn't want that heritage arts element to the project, but in your papers it says that you're going with a heritage and arts project. And also they said it's not, it was about the not front loading the grant. Most of the grant was going to spend in year 2 and they wanted it to be spent in year 1, which was nothing to do with Rig Arts. I'm really sorry to push the point, but I think we've got a great organisation here and they've been really done a disservice. So all I'm looking for is the facts to be recorded and put into this report. That's what I'm asking. That's what I'm asking for.
Okay, thanks, Lynn. I'll let other members in first, and then when you're summarising, you could actually try and revert back to some of the points that Lynn has made. So the next person to come in was Natasha Murphy and then Martin Brennan. Natasha.
Thanks, Jim. Okay, so mine refers more so to Parkley, but I've got a general question and I've got a follow-up about Parkley. So my general question is, under 2.6 it says, should applicants not be successful in the grant submission, there's a risk for Inverclyde Council that there's reliance on us to support increased grant revenue. My understanding is that the whole purpose of this is we're applying to the Scottish Government for a grant in partnership with other organisations. So maybe I'm being a bit naive here, but my thinking would be that if it's not successful, that we've not committed funds to these projects yet. Therefore, if it's not successful at Scottish Government level, that would mean that we wouldn't be part of a partnership project. Therefore, there wouldn't be any costs for us. So can you answer that first, and I'll come in with my second point after.
If we, for yourself, convener, if we're the main application, so if we put in for 1.1 million and there's a substance of the funding still available, we take the full risk if the award has been given to the council.
Sorry, I'm just not getting this, Hugh. So if we put in for 1.1 million and you're saying if the Scottish Government doesn't give us it, we still need to go ahead with the project for 1.1 million?
No. If the project is 1.6 million, which it is in our business plan, right, there is a surplus of 500,000. So if the council put a support of 1.1 million, then they have the risk of the £500,000 if it's been awarded.
Right, I understand that. So that kind of leads nicely into my other question, which was around Parkley. As Councillor Clougherty said, I would think that everybody around the table here is fully supportive of what Parkley does. It has really been core to a lot of people in Inverclyde's development, and it has provided a lot of community there. So with that, I was wondering, so we're saying that the recommendation is that we put it back to next year, but I was wondering, is there not any way that we can actually write it into the conditions where we would only partner upon them getting that match funding? I know that's kind of what's already written there, but actually saying to Parkley, we'll put in that we're happy to put forward your project to the Scottish Government to work in partnership with us. However, we will only work in partnership upon you gaining that match funding, which I assume is what's already been in that. But can we have that written into the grant proposal for the Scottish Government? Because I think it should still go forward, because I think if we can get something written in place where basically we're saying, look, we want to partner with you, we value this project, and you've got to remember it is COVID at the moment, so the ability of some firms and some organisations to gain funding has been really difficult. So we also need to take that into consideration, I feel, with this paper.
Okay, thanks, Natasha. Hugh, can you answer the specific questions regarding the bid?
I think the key thing about the bid is that when the bid goes in for Bryanston out, they are saying that they want 1.1 million from Scottish Government. Within their business plan, they're saying they need 1.6 million. So when Scottish Government look at that, there's a gap there, okay, and there's not any committed funding towards that. So that's the risk at the present moment, is when you're going into an application, either the government makes that decision and just automatically knocks it back, or so much funding. Previously, within their stage 1 application, they were stating that they were looking for match funding, but with stage 2 going in, they've got no confirmed match funding.
Okay, no, I understand that, but I would think that, sorry, convener, I would think that like other funding, like for example, we're going to come on to GTVO later, sometimes we say that we'll only release funding if they can evidence certain things. So is the Scottish Government not doing that as part of this fund?
I mean, it's an independent board that makes this decision. So it's up to them to make that decision. Either they fund the 1.1 million and don't ask for the fund back, the 5.4 million. So we couldn't gas that, convener.
Okay.
Okay, thanks, Hugh. I'm going to let Martin Brennan in, Proviston, and then Elizabeth Robertson.
Thanks, Jim, and thanks again, Hugh. I found your report very, very clear. The 2.3 Part B Garden Hub is now withdrawn from the Stage 2 application. Now that's a pity, as we all know, because this group does excellent work with young people who have major difficulties. So I'm going to ask you a question. Would it be possible to give the group some reassurance that we would support a further bid in March?
For yourself, convener, I've already done that. I've put I wrote to them after the decision was made. I wrote to them and say that we would be supporting any way forward for to support the next round, which is round 9.
Just for clarity, Hugh, when did you write to them?
I wrote to them last Friday.
Last Friday. Thanks very much, Hugh.
Okay, I'll let Elizabeth in and then David Wilson. Elizabeth.
Thanks, convener. I do think that in terms of, I'm going back to the King George VI building for my comments, I do think that we haven't treated regards particularly well in terms of how the communication in particular has gone with regards to the decisions for the funding bid. I accept that they've been spoken to, and we've kind of tried to have conversations with them after the event. It would be obviously preferable if we didn't have to do that. But my question really is, I've got two. One is about regards and what's happening with the King George VI building. What's the situation moving forward? Are we partnering with regards moving forward with this. I'm not really clear as to that, because it would be useful to know. That's my first question. I'll ask the next one in a minute.
Hugh?
Yeah, I mean, obviously the key thing for us is to, at the moment within the paper, is to relocate Clune Park Resource Centre. But again, we're more than welcome with Clune Park Resource Centre to work with any partner within that facility. But not going forward as a bid.
Sorry, can I ask you to repeat that very last thing? You said there was a wee bit of interference, I didn't quite hear it.
Right. So at the present moment, we're keen to work with Regards and as we are with any community facility and get them to use the facility if we're successful. And Clune Park Resource Centre would be using that. But at the moment, there's not this is going in as a joint bid between Inverclyde Leisure and Inverclyde Council.
Okay.
Elizabeth?
Thanks,
Okay.
that answers that. I really do hope we are able to kind of move forward in partnership with them in some way, because I don't think it was a great situation. The other question that I have is it's a question I've had to ask in a different context with other buildings, but what we're doing with the King George VI building is in quite close proximity to 7.5 John Wood Street. And I'm just wondering again, if we're making an investment in King George VI and 7.5 John Wood Street is already there, how do we make sure that they're complementary venues that enhance the offer to the community rather than being competitors?
Yeah, that's for yourself, Convener. That's very key that we make sure that they are enhancing each other and strengths together. You know, moving in the community centre with a bigger space into the town would only benefit John Wood Street. We're giving more opportunities for them to work together in that space.
Okay. Elizabeth, that's okay. Can I move on to Councillor Wilson, then Councillor McCabe? Councillor Wilson. Can you hear me, David? We'll take Councillor McCabe. Oh, no.
Sorry, there I am now. Sorry. Yeah. Sorry, you don't have vision and you didn't have sound. Councillor Quinn has answered most of the questions I had. What I would like to ask you, Hugh, is that why do you think that combining with Clune Park Resource Centre will give us a better outlook or a better output than working with Regards? Why have you gone down that route?
I don't think that give us I think it's a different project altogether, Councillor. I think it's about looking at it and putting a fund to try and get money in to support the King George building. And when I was asked to look at that, we had a debate going on about Clune Park Resource Centre, and I suggested, why do we not look at that if we can't get the funding? Remember that Scottish Government have knocked back the funding for Regards project twice now. And obviously, it was keen that we were asked if we could bid in to support something else or support something else. And moving the Clune Park Resource Centre into the town from our local action plans meetings that we've just had, people are keen to have a community facility in the Lower Port Glasgow. And at the moment, the Clune Park facility is underutilised, maybe because of the regeneration of the area. And people are not getting in there as much as they should be getting in there. So that it was only to try and move that facility in there. And I've worked very close. I've had a discussion with the management board, the volunteer management board of Clune Park Resource Centre, and they were very keen on the idea.
So really, under the circumstances, you've been pragmatic.
I've been trying to, as an officer, and I understand that the communication has not been great, and I take that on board. As an officer looking to enhance the wider community facilities, that's what I've been trying to do.
Thank you.
Sorry, Stephen.
Yeah, I was just waiting for Councillor Wilson to declare his interest in this particular matter, but I'm sure he'll record that elsewhere. No, I mean, I'm presuming.
Excuse me. Very good, Stephen. You're developing a sense of humour these days.
I'm trying my best, David. I'm presuming that the reason why the report's before this committee is primarily because officers are asking us to support the relocation of Clune Park Resource Centre into the King George VI building if this particular application is successful, because regeneration capital grant applications tend to be the providence of the Environment Regeneration Committee. So that's principally what we're looking at. And the other information is background information. I certainly have a lot of sympathy for the partly branching out project, and I hope that we can support that and find a way to secure the match funding so that project can get funding in the next round. I think the men's shed project seems a very worthwhile project as well. But in terms of King George's VI and Clune Park Resource Centre, I mean, I think what's being proposed is an eminently sensible proposal. The council, in its wisdom, decided that we wanted to save the second oldest building in Port Glasgow and the oldest if you exclude the castle, because it was of historic importance to the town. And we decided to commit a substantial amount of money to save that building. Unfortunately, we didn't realise it was in the bad condition it was in, and a lot of the money has obviously had to get into knocking parts of the building down, etc., and putting newer material in to secure its future. But given that investment, it was critically important that we did have a project that would bring the building back into beneficial use. And I think the Rig Arts project, on the face of it, was a very exciting project and worthwhile in terms of pursuing. Unfortunately, for whatever reason, the bid was unsuccessful, and we've got this new project which hopefully will be successful because it does have an anchor tenant, it does have a source of revenue to help run the building. But I think equally it's important that we don't lose sight of the previous involvement from Rig Arts, and that we do engage with them to see if we can develop a partnership between Rig Arts and Clune Park Resource Centre, or whatever it's going to be called, if it is relocated. Because I mean, I think the report talks about the fact that currently Clune Park Resource Centre effectively is only open for 25 hours a week. And I mean, I don't think the current uses of the resource centre will take up all of the use of this building once it's completed, excepting part of the building as available for use by the masons. So I think Rig Arts being involved, being in a partnership, whether it be a subtenant or leasing part of the facility or whatever, working in partnership with Clune Park Resource Centre, can only add to the proposed project. So I would hope that if we are successful, we would absolutely engage with Rig Arts and try to develop that partnership, because I think they've got a lot to offer as an organisation, and I think they've got a lot to offer specifically Port Glasgow. So I would certainly endorse what other members are saying, that we should absolutely take forward that partnership with Rig Arts.
Okay, thanks, Stephen. Hugh, do you want to comment on that and how we can cement that partnership with Rig Arts?
Yeah, I mean, I've had conversation with Rig Arts, and I will have further conversations about them using and supporting this project as we go forward. You know, I'm as a keen, anything at all to enhance that building and investment we've had in it. And unfortunately, Rig Arts have been unsuccessful, or the League Council in partnership with Rig Arts have been unsuccessful. I'm keen to have worked more closely with Rig Arts on this.
Okay, thank you, Hugh. I'm going to let Lynn come back in. I said I'd let her in before I end. Lynn?
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, obviously there's useful conversations, but there's still a couple of things that is kind of loose ends, if you like, that I would really like for us to look at the recommendations and try and tie them into there. One is to immediately make contact with the King George Building Steering Group, because I think they deserve the respect of actually having a sit-down conversation with that steering group. They were initially set up to save the building, and they've kind of been disbanded. So I would really like for that to happen, so that they're involved in the discussions pretty much where we're taking the building next. They should be actually at the forefront of that discussion. We talk about public consultation, and community participation, and then, folk are joined committees to give their views, and then we totally disregard them. So I reckon as a good PR exercise, we should immediately get back to that group and have a sit around the table, digitally obviously, and have a conversation with them. And secondly, I would like it noted that we need to have an immediate meeting with Rig Arts to discuss how we are going to partnership with the council in future, whatever format that is. But I think I would like something in there to say that, because I think they need to be recognised for the amount of work that went into that bid. Okay, we can argue about through the bid process, sometimes it takes a lot of reiterations of a project to actually get, so that there wasn't really a reason why we could have took something and resubmitted it. So being involved in bids before, that's what happens. The funder likes to work with you to tweak the bits that are the one you're quite happy with. So so that was the two additions I would like in the recommendations.
Right, so Hugh, what I've got from Lynn is a meeting with the KG, the sixth or the sixth steering group. Now, I'm acutely aware that the deadline for submissions are at the end of this week. So I assume we don't want anything to halt the submissions going in. But I think it's important if we agree that we do have a meeting and inform the KG, the sixth steering group, or have a discussion with them to say the way forward of the new proposals, and also include within that, although it will probably be a separate meeting, regards to see, and I'm taking Councillor Jim McElhenny's comment as well with regard to if they were hoping to go into the Clune Park School, if we can try and ensure that we liaise with them immediately as well to see what they can do with the KG, the sixth building. Now, is that possible, Hugh?
For yourself, Convener, I think the part of the old renovation of Clune Park area is that the recommendation is that we would reduce that site, and I'm not sure.
So I think that's fine. I just think for the new building, I think we're talking about for the new building going. I think that's what Lynn was talking about.
Yeah.
The new building in the future. I mean, we know what's past is past. So I was just going by Jim's comment, Jim McElhenny's comment. I think what Lynn is saying is that we want to get in touch with regards. We want to ensure them that we are happy with partnership, and we want to see what, in conjunction with the steering group, we can actually do for that building, including the new resource centre. That's my understanding of what we're asking there. And I just want to make sure that's okay.
For yourself, Convener, I'll take everything on and I'll do my utmost to meet with everybody as soon as I possibly can.
Right, so hopefully that solves the KG, the sixth. Now, if we can actually look, I think we're all happy with the men's shed, and I think we understand the position with the Greenock Town Centre. Although it pains us that we want something to happen quickly, I think we understand a new owner coming in, getting their feet under the table, allowing a regeneration team to get in touch with the owners and seeing what we can do and what is possible with them. I think we understand that. I think the other thorny flesh is the whole Parkway. You can tell from Stephen, from Martin, from Natasha, that there's that wee bit uneasiness there about if we leave the project to next year, what comfort can you give us that, I know you can't guarantee it, but what comfort can you give us that they'll be able to get their dominoes lined up for next year with the council's support, and that, as far as you can tell, that the application has got a good chance of success if we delay it to next year?
I think for yourself, Convener, there's any other application, it's been through to stage 2. So obviously Scottish Government are very interested in the project, okay? But I think the biggest gap that we've all got is finding the external funding to match the 1.6 million, which is about 540,000. Obviously, Branch now are trying to submit bids to support that, but I can't guarantee, or they can't guarantee that extra money would be available this time next year, because nobody knows, but they would need to apply for it. I think their business plan and a phased approach over a number of years is something that's interesting. But I think the key thing for us is at the moment is that there's no match funding. Will Scottish Government look at that and question it possibly? Because from phase 1 they were looking at getting match funding, but they've not got that in writing at the present moment. The other option they've got is that they submit for the full 1.6 million to education to Scottish Government and just put it in and see what they want. But I'm not sure that I had a conversation this morning with them. I'm not sure they're keen to do that.
But if they were to do that, we would support that application.
We need to go back to through CMT, yeah, but yeah, as long as it's tied up to its business plan.
Right, okay. Right. I think I'm clearing that. I'm looking to see if any member who's not been in before wishes to come in. I've got Lynn wishing to come back in again. Is there any member that's not been in before wishes to come in? If not, I'll let Lynn back in. Lynn?
No, I think that was my original coming back in. We've lost it here. How many times have we come back in? No,
Right,
I think
that's fine, Lynn.
I don't know if Gwen's just going to repeat the recommendations. I just want that clear in there because I think it's clear it's the steering group as a whole, not individual meetings. We want to reconvene the steering group for the way going forward because we had a group in place that had the building, and we want to make sure that established and we go on ongoing consultation with them.
Yeah, I think that's fine. And also what you said about Rig Arts as well, I'm sure we like
the Rig Arts, to amend the relationship, I reckon would be useful.
And I think that's fine, Lynn. Gwen, you've got that, you just add that as a recommendation. So it's to reconvene the KG, the sixth steering group, with regard to the overall project, and also to liaise with Rig Arts to see how we can facilitate them in the new building, if possible.
Yes.
And that's okay now.
Yep. Convener, what I have is in relation to the King George building, and without affecting the submission, that immediate contacts to be made with the steering group and to involve them in the future project discussions, and to make immediate contact with regard to discuss ways to work with them in the future in relation to the new building.
Okay, I think that's fine. I think that covers, I know Lynn's away just now, but I think that covers what Lynn was looking for. The only thorny flesh is the that way branched now. If we take Hugh's idea of actually try to submit the 1.5 million, 1.6 million bid and pursue that, if not with that assurance that they will get the full support of the council in their bid for next year. And I'm just looking to see, and Ruth has added a comment there as well. So with that, can we agree the paper? Yes.
Agreed.
Thanks very much for that. I mean, I know it's, and can I just say, I know it was a late paper as well, so our apologies for that. I know there was an awful lot in it, but I'm sure you are aware in this COVID times, our officers have been working to the virtual line and an awful lot of these things, so I do apologise for the lateness of the paper, but thankfully we've been through it and it allows them to do the submission before the end of the week. Okay, so
through you, Convener, can we just ensure that Councillor MacLeod is brought back into the meeting? Apologies.
No problem, Shan, I should have sorted that.
Thank you very much. Can we just check he's back? Thank you.
Councillor MacLeod, can you hear us?
I can indeed.
Thank you. Thanks.
Come back, Jim. The next agenda item is number 7, and it's the Year of the Young People Legacy. And again, that will be Hugh.
Thanks, Convener. This is just a report to give the committee an update of where we are, or where we've been over the Year of the Legacy money, 1920. Committee agreed that the £20,000 would be allocated to the Year of the Young People, Legacy of the Year of the Young People, for the next 5 years previously. Within the report gives you a range of opportunities that's happened across the authority with young people. It gives you the recommendation is to look at the plan going forward. Obviously, within the pandemic, at the moment, things have had to change drastically for engaging with young people, and we're working very closely with our young people continually to get views and opinions on how to do that. And 5.2 gives you the way that we're looking to engage with our young people for the rest of this year and taking it forward. I'm happy to take any questions.
Okay, thank you, Hugh. Natasha, you first.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Convener. I suppose I was just wanting to say that I fully support the fact that this plan is going to be co-produced with young people. I think that's something that we need more input from as our young people in the area. But I was just wanting to ask, is there going to be a further report back to this committee about what the plan will be? Because I'm very aware that usually we'd be running up towards the Year of the Young People, the Legacy Awards, and obviously this year that will have to look different. So will we be getting a further report back just telling us what the young people and COD have decided to do with the funding this year?
Yeah, thanks for that, Convener. For yourself, Convener, yeah, we'll have another report back in January about what we're hoping to do for the remaining of the year. We are still engaging online with our young people, and I know Ruth's been meeting with them regularly to get ideas about how we can do things forward. It's key that we keep young people involved as we go forward. Obviously, unfortunately, we're not able to do our celebration of our young people, but there's other things in mind that we can do to celebrate young people. The pandemic's had a major issue in some of our young people, and it's how we can work with them to get some things through, support them. But we are working closely with young people, and I know it's one of the key agendas we want to do.
Okay, thank you so much. Thanks, Convener.
Right, thanks. Elizabeth?
Thanks, Jim. Just a question about one of the bullet points in 5.2. One of the things we've said we want to do is another Clyde Conversations event. I'm just aware that Clyde Conversations emanated from the 2013 Health and Wellbeing Survey. I know we're obviously talking about that later in the agenda, but I'm just wondering if there's the intention to discuss with our young people what they've said about themselves at the next Clyde Conversations event. I would vote for that if that was a thing we were thinking about doing.
Yeah, for yourself, Convener, yeah, I think that's very key that we do that. I think one of the things we are looking at is looking at it in localities and tying it into the localities and then bring the young people back. I think it's important that we get back to the young people from the survey and tie it back into the wider communication through Clyde Conversation. Obviously, hopefully next year at some time we can maybe get some young people together in a bigger sense to celebrate that and get that forward. But if not, we'll be doing that in a locality based within the schools.
Okay, thanks, you. Lynn?
Sorry, I wasn't muted to start with. Sorry, apologies. Yeah, just a quick question on, obviously it's been noted that you're planning to spend the rest of the money on an upgrade to the Greenock I Zone. I'm just maybe questioning that, because obviously it's great that we're continuing to fund the sort of Year of the Young Person legacy and we're £20,000. But I'm just concerned that that's maybe not wide enough, because the money is meant to be about all young people in Inverclyde. So I'm just thinking that a number of those will miss out because they're not participating at the I-Zone. And also probably to mention, if I-Zone needs a wee bit of an upgrade, should we not be funding that through sort of core budgets? Because this 20 grand was meant to be doing something in addition and something a bit more exciting. So it's not a criticism, I'm just questioning to make sure the kids get the money they should be. And I know we're limited to what we can do in the current climate, but something digitally enabled or that maybe could attract a wider audience would be great.
For yourself, Convener, there was a little bit of money ring fence for that because the young people wanted to put the facility to get more people in as a cafe facility and endorse the way that, and there was young people's ideas. So there was some funding, I think it was £500 towards that, and the rest of it was out of the core budget. We put a new kitchen and things like that and to support that. So it was the young people's ideas that we enhanced for that, but take that on board.
Okay, thanks, Hugh. I'll ask if Jim McLeod. Jim, have you got any questions?
Yeah, Jim, obviously it's a very good report, and obviously the report refers to 2019 to 2020. But just like what I'd asked for earlier on in the agenda, you know, it'd be good to get some more recent information, particularly during the pandemic, what's happening around youth services, the I-Zones and whatever else, if we could maybe get a report about that sometime in the near future. Thank you.
Through yourself, Convener, I'm due to bring back an annual report for CLD services at the next committee, and that'll have all the stuff that's been done over the pandemic, including with young people, youth work and adult learning.
Thank you.
Is that okay, Jim? Right,
yes, that's
okay.
fine. Thanks, Jim.
Right, thank you. I can't see any other questions. Can I ask we agree the report? Thank you. Now, what I intend to do, if you crave my indulgence, rather than actually putting the press Lorraine out just now, what I would intend to do is take the points for noting first of all. So we've got 4 items for noting. So that's agenda item 10A, 10B, 10C and 10D. So rather than excluding the press just now, if we could do these items first, and then I'll go back to agenda number 8, and then agenda item number 17 as it is in the paper. I know it's a bit convoluted, but hopefully it'll let the process go easier. Okay, and if my officers are okay with that, I would ask you just to do very short introductions to these, and then I'll just open it for questions. They are for noting items, so hopefully it'll go smoothly. Hugh, the first one is the Community Safety Network Annual Report.
Yeah, through yourself, Convener, this is just a report of the National Community Safety Net Annual Report, which is the Scottish Community Safety Network across Scotland. I'm delighted to say that one of our officers, Ian Hanley, is the chair of that, so we've agreed as a committee to release Ian to support that organisation. And the organisation works closely with Scottish Government to enhance community safety across Scotland. Happy to take any questions.
Do we have any questions on that? No. Can we move to 10B, which is really good news? And I can see Alana's still not here, which is a pity because we'd want to give her congratulations again. But Tony, have you got anything you wish to add to 10A, which is 10B, sorry, the successful bid for what institution?
Not just to highlight this good news story that we've managed to get £230,000 from the National Lottery Heritage Fund, and it's to undertake a project, and the project aims are detailed in the report. But overall, I think it's a really good award where NHLF are really restricting their awards, and the fact that Inverclyde got one is really, really good and to be welcomed, and I'll pass on your congratulations to Alana.
Thank you, Tony. Any other questions? Martin, as Provost just said, plaudits and well done. Thanks, Martin, and I'm sure that's the same for every member. So we thank you for that. Again, it's the next couple is the use of emergency powers. If we could just maybe agree these, unless there's any questions. So 10C,
agreed.
The use of emergency powers for the Parklea pitches.
Agreed.
Thank you, David. And 10C is the use of emergency powers for the festive film.
Agreed.
I'm just looking to see, just in case, David, there might be members with questions. Okay.
Jim.
Jim McLeod, yes, Jim.
Yeah. Just regarding 10D, about the festive film, I just wondered, I think it's really good that the festive film is going ahead. Obviously, it's very sad this year that pantomime season is sadly productions throughout Inverclyde aren't able to proceed. What I would just ask, I mean, I don't know how much it would have been in our officers' power to do it. But I just wondered if any consideration, perhaps with other groups who normally put on panto productions, might have been involved in, even a few people from each of the other groups might have been involved in the making of the film for the Christmas Wonderland.
Yeah, I'll let Ruth come in there because obviously Ruth was involved in this as well. Ruth?
Yeah, absolutely. And I looked into that. The people who will be filming it will be filming in a bubble. So I'm afraid we have to be very tight with the amount of people who can star in it. And without giving any spoilers, we've asked for a certain elected member who might be provost to possibly star in it. And he's got to be isolated from other people too. So there's two reasons we can't have. And of course, the first question we asked is, can we involve some of the kids in the filming of it? One, because it's a bubble, and the other reason is because you're paying per minute for filming, and actually they need to have professional actors in so that they can, apart from, I would have to say, the provost, who can to keep the costs down as well.
Okay. Oh, no, you don't.
Don't even go there, David. So I did hear somebody saying that they've seen Aina, is it Aina, up at Craigmarnock School?
Isa,
is it?
Isa draining.
Thank you. So with that, we thank you for noting that. And can we now, with that, can I now move the exclusion of public and press? So Lorraine, if you could quickly leave us, Hopefully, if you're in the lobby, we'll tell you when the Education Committee is going to start. But I would think after this, members will want a comfort break as well.
I think we'll just see.
I think it's soon to assume that we'll start back probably at 4:30 for the Education Committee, and that gives members a chance of a comfort break as well, if that's okay. Can I call the meeting back together again, and can I thank our teachers and our parent members, our church members, for their forbearance in waiting this long. I do realise it is problematic when we do try and put these two committees on together, and we will look at it again to see if there's any way we can do it a wee bit better. So thank you very much for waiting. It is much appreciated, and your input is much appreciated as well. So with that, I'll start the meeting again and just go over the idea of asking for any apologies or declarations of interest, and just to make members aware that it's still recorded. Sian.
I'm just trying to clarify who's actually here now, convener. I think can I check, is Councillor Wilson here for this part of the meeting? I couldn't see his name. Is he back? No.
No.
And also, is Reverend Fraser Donaldson, I don't think is here either. If Reverend Donaldson's there, could he say? Oh, there's Councillor Wilson's here now, and I think Reverend Donaldson's not here, but I think everyone else is. So,
okay.
Are there any declarations of interest in relation to the education items? No. Okay.
Can we just check that there is nobody in the lobby, Sian?
No, there's definitely nobody in the lobby, no.
Thank you.
Diane, there isn't, is there? No. No.
Thank you. So thank you very much again, everybody. Do we have any declarations of interest for this part of the meeting? No declarations of interest. Can we move along to agenda item number 9, which is the Education Revenue Budget Account for period 5 to the 31st of August. And that will be Ian that will take us through this. Ian?
Yeah, thanks, convener. This is Education Revenue Budget Report for period 5 up to the end of August 2020. The current budget for the education part of the committee is 87.6 million, and the latest projection is an overspend of 2.885 million. Included within that projection are COVID-19 related costs of 2.847 million, and these will be fully funded by the Council's approved COVID-19 budget. If we exclude these costs for COVID-19, there's a projected overspend of 38,000. The main part of the report to refer you to is section 5, and that gives you the details of the variance responsible for the projected overspend of 2.885 million, including the COVID-19 cost. Most of the variances that are listed in that section of the report are COVID-19 related, and will be, as I've said before, will be funded from the approved COVID-19 budget. The variances for property costs, transport costs, EMA, early years framework and ASN placements are non-COVID-19 variances, so that's really the important ones at this stage. So in the interest of time, I don't propose to be running through them all. So I'll move on to section 6 of the report. That gives you details of the earmarked reserves. Total earmarked reserves for 2021 are 2.399 million, and we're projecting to spend 2.218 million of that in the current financial year. Expenditure to date is 264,000, or 11.9% of the expected total. Spend to date per the profile was expected to be 514,000, so at this stage of the year there's slippage of 250,000, or 48.6%, and all of that relates to the early years 1140 earmarked reserves. I'm not requesting any environments this cycle, so committee are asked to note the projected overspend of 38,000 net of the 2.847 million of costs relating to COVID, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Okay, thank you very much for that. So as normal, if you indicate any questions in the chat, if not, just wave at me and I'll get to you somehow. We don't seem to have any questions. Can we agree, Paula?
Sorry, I put my hands up on the hands up, but they underspend in gas and biomass. I'm just very aware that in schools just now they're being asked to heat and ventilate. So presumably there will be an increased heating bill. And just would that be covered from the COVID costs, or will that come from the budget as is?
Through you, convener, the first I'll take the biomass. As you know, there's been problems with that plant in the future, so it was offline again for a period of time. So there's an underspend in biomass as a result of that. The gas, I've started seeing the consumption, as you say, the windows are opening, the schools and the heating's on, so I have seen the consumption starting to kick on from August, September, as you would expect with that, but there's still enough budget in the core budget to fund it. Even taking that into account, I'm still seeing this on the underspend, so I've taken that into account in my projection, and it's still looking as if we will have an underspend for gas, even although the heating's obviously working harder than it normally would be.
Thanks, Ian.
Okay, Paula. Any other questions? If not, can we agree the recommendations? And can we move along to agenda item number 12, which is the usual full capital education capital programme 2020 to 2023. Eddie.
Thanks, convener. The report provides an update on the projects within the education capital programme. Section 5 deals with the projects on site. Well, not all of them on site, as the committee will be aware. St Mary's transferred back to the refurbished and extended building after the October holiday period, with the first operational day on Friday, the 23rd of October. The focus now will be in progressing the final account for the project and quantifying the COVID and non-COVID delay costs for the contractor. As noted within 5.2, we require to issue tenders for a completion contract for the Gourock Primary School project. That work is progressing, although the information flow from the consultants has been an issue, and this is being addressed by technical services. On the former Kelly Street Children's Centre site, as previously reported, the demolition element is complete, and we've got tenders returned for the landscaping works and awaiting acceptance, and that's just pending some statutory approvals, which includes Scottish Water approval for the drainage connection, and we hope to receive that within the next week or so. The Helens Children's Centre refurbishment project is progressing on site, as outlined within the report. Section 6 covers the interactive whiteboard refresh, and as noted, we've managed to progress a first phase for 5 primary schools using a combination of back shift working and the October holiday period, and we'll look to progress the second phase for 3 secondary schools prior to the end of the current financial year. Section 7 summarises the ongoing work across the estate on life cycle works generally, and including LED upgrade and artificial pitch asset management related works. Section 8 deals with projects addressing 1140 hours. Since the last report, the Gourock Yak project is completed and it's in use as of the start of this week. Both of the larger scale hub projects at Rainbow and Larkfield have also now started on site. The 2 smaller scale additional projects at Well Park and Glen Park are being progressed and targeted for completion prior to the end of the current financial year. In terms of approved budgets, we're currently reporting expenditure of 738,000 from a restated approved budget of 3.231 million. Or just under 23% at the halfway point of the financial year. We're also reporting net advancement of 314,000, or just under 10%. And as noted within the report, there's a potential to improve on that depending on the progress of the further life cycle works and interactive board refresh works. So that's the committee note the report and approve the recommendations, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Jim, you're on mute.
Sorry, Martin. Yeah, Martin first.
Okay, Jim, thank you very much. This is just a comment on what we've heard from Eddie and what we've been hearing from Eddie for the past 5 or 6 years. It's a deeply personal statement, so listen up, Jim. For myself, I attended substandard school buildings, both in primary school and secondary school. So did my children, and I taught in substandard school buildings for many years. So I'm very happy that my grandchildren at St Mary's and at Notre Dame are now experiencing nothing but the best. And I'd like to register my personal thanks to the councillors and the council officers who had the imagination and the vision to see this through, despite a financial crash and austerity. That's what's been achieved here in Inverclyde. End of comment.
No, thank you, Martin. I think it's much appreciated by our officers and members from all political parties. I'll let Elizabeth come in next. Elizabeth?
How can you follow a comment like that, Jim? How can you do that? I'll try. This is actually just a question about the whiteboards. Actually, when we have an IT refresh, it's quite easy to imagine there being a life after Inverclyde Council for our IT equipment, but I'm not sure that that's the same for our whiteboards. And yet it seems like quite a huge chunk of kit to just not have a life after we've finished using it. And I'd just like to kind of query what we do just in terms of that environmental impetus that's really important to all of us.
Yeah, through you, convener. The firms that we engage to provide the new equipment also dispose of the old equipment sustainably, so that they engage further companies who then recycle that equipment. And there's different ways they go about that, but they do go to another place and are reused to a degree, depending whether it's the frames or the actual electronic equipment itself. We're also keeping some of the equipment as spares until we've actually got through the whole refresh, because we still have some of the older kit out there. So some of the projectors, we'll hold a certain amount of them in stock just in case we need them until we've got through the full refresh.
Thanks, Eddie. Elizabeth?
Thanks. Can I just check that that's not the whiteboards are going to a farm?
No, they go to a company who responsibly dispose of it, and it is recycled. Yeah.
That's brilliant. Thank you. Thanks.
Now, Eddie, we've got a written question from Lynn with regard to Gourock Primary School. Do we have a revised date for the retender?
I'm afraid not, and that's part of my verbal update, was that the consultants have been a bit slower than we'd like to get the actual tender document ready. So it's not out yet, and when that is issued, then we'll have a better idea of what the actual programme will be. But obviously, even when it's issued, we need to get it back and evaluate it and then get an acceptance out. So it is a wee bit behind where we'd like it to be, but we're pushing it as hard as we can. And as soon as we've got a date and a programme, I'll advise all.
Thank you, Eddie. Lynn, is that okay? Okay. Not get anybody in the chat. Jim McLeod, have you got any questions? No question, Jim?
No, it's just one question. I see that some floors are having to be replaced in some of our schools and some of the facilities. Some of the schools only built in the last 10 years or so. Is that the sort of life expectancy we can expect for flooring?
So, sorry, is that the interactive boards? The question on?
No, I'm talking about floors.
Flooring. Sorry, yep. Yeah, through you, convener. Floor finishes, it varies depending on what type of finish it is. They all come with slightly different manufacturers' expected lifespans. Generally, you get anything between 7 and maybe even up to 15 years out of a floor covering. But again, it depends on where they are. So circulation spaces, areas of high traffic, you're on the lower end of that scale. In other areas, you can last 10 to 15 years, possibly. But again, it depends on its use as well, because a lot of primary schools where we've got carpets in classrooms, they get a lot of use, especially in the earlier stages. Stuff gets put into the carpet, whether it's Play-Doh or a sand or whatever it is. So again, there's a whole lot of factors that go towards it, but anything between 7 and 15 years in the extreme, 10 in average.
Okay, thanks, Eddie. Jim, does that answer your question okay?
Yeah, Jim, but what I would just want to ask beyond that then is, it's good to see we're obviously doing it. Do we have a budget then that we keep a rolling budget for this type of work? Because obviously it happens in one or two schools, it's going to happen in others too.
Yeah, through you, convener. I mean, that is essentially what our future capital programme is at the moment, is predominantly life cycle funding, and that funding is there, and it reaches £2.5–3 million per annum, as long as it keeps being committed to over obviously the funding commitments. But that is there to keep all the schools in at least good or satisfactory condition, and that is going to be key over the next 5 to 10 years. Although we have to come up with a new learning estate strategy, obviously, and that's one of the next actions on our side to complete that.
Yeah, thanks, Eddie. And I suppose it fits in nicely with Martin's comments. There's no use building all nice schools and then not spending money on the upkeep of them. So the pressure is on our council, all of us, to ensure that our schools are kept up to that top notch, as Martin says, facilities for our children for the future. I'm looking, I can't see any other questions. Chris McElhenney. Chris.
Thanks, convener. I was just wondering if there was any sort of early dialogue with the Scottish Government looking ahead to a civil service level and a political level, looking ahead to the next Scottish Parliament election, looking ahead to the next budget settings in terms of the capital funding that the Scottish Government had made available for new schools. And obviously we had, perhaps grievance is the right word, that we had obviously made the political choice to invest in new schools, which gives us an annual bill every year, but obviously there's potentially money for other councils to build new schools. So in terms of just like life cycle, etc., is there any dialogue looking ahead to perhaps some capital allowance for us, so that taking account that we made the political choices to spend £250 million, which other councils didn't, and it's perhaps then unfair that there wouldn't be resource released to us to help maybe augment that life cycle programme mentioned, when other councils perhaps are going to get significant sums over the next 4, 5, 10 years to build new schools.
Eddie?
Through you, convener, that there's no dialogue on anything other than the fact that we've put a holding position back on the current funding stream for new schools. It's difficult at the moment for us, obviously, because of where we are. We do not have a project that would fit in the qualifying criteria for the current funding stream, which is really geared more towards new facilities. Although they say it is also suitable for refurbishments, it's very, very difficult in reality, looking at the different funding criteria and what you have to sign up to make a refurbishment work through that funding stream and criteria. I suppose what we need to do is come up with our new learning estate strategy and see if we'd be in a position to bid for any of that future funding, because there'll probably be another 2 rounds of that to be allocated. I'm not aware of any other discussions or money being available for things like life cycle. I know it's been raised that some of the authority networks, like the heads of property services, and they were trying to lobby government to say, can we get some money for major life cycle work or refurbishments that would help kickstart the construction sector and give a boost to the economy. But I don't think it has got anywhere to my knowledge.
Okay, thanks. Chris, is that okay as an answer? Maybe not the answer we wanted, but yeah, I assume that's okay. Does anybody else have a comment or a question? If not, can we thank Eddie for his report and move on to the next agenda item, which is agenda item number 13. Education Services Improvement Plan 20 to 21. Michael.
Through you, convener. Good afternoon, everybody. So this is the final draft of the Services Improvement Plan, which is drawn from the Standards and Quality Report, which was shared with you at the previous committee. I'll not say much more other than, obviously, in that last Standards and Quality Report, we did indicate what the next steps and targets would be, and this plan now gives much more detail around what we're working on currently at this time. I would draw committee's attention to the section around targets. What we've decided to do this year is to maintain the targets that we set for ourselves last year. Obviously, those targets last year we didn't have, for example, the same amount of data across particularly BGE phase of schools because of the lockdown. So our position is to retain those targets for this year in the hope that we would be able to meet them this year. The initial feedback from schools in respect of where they are at the moment is that broadly, as data or teachers are beginning to sort of capture outcomes at the moment as to where children are, is that children broadly are where we would expect them to be, but there are certainly some schools, some classes, some cohorts where it's evident that that progress has been affected by the lockdown. So obviously a key part of our work and within this plan is to support schools to look at existing additional teach children, make more rapid progress and catch up on some of that ground that was lost. Happy to take any questions.
Okay, thank you, Michael. The first question's from Elizabeth Robertson.
Thanks, Jim. Thanks, Michael, for the report. It's really helpful and I think a wise decision to keep last year's targets, just in terms of the context that we're in and not putting anyone under any more pressure than they have to be under in the current context. Can I just ask a question about page 14 of the report, page 111 of our packs? The tabulation there, the Inverclyde figure, is that the actual percentages that we achieved in 2019? Can I just check that before I ask a question that's foolish?
Yes.
Okay. Can I just ask if there's any chat around the S3 metrics, because the primary metrics seem to be pretty good and the senior phase metrics seem to be pretty good, but I'm just wondering about the S3 metrics, if we can chat those through a bit.
Yep, certainly through you, convener. I mean, I think what it would be fair to say that you'll note in the report, one of our targets or priorities is to continue to work with schools around the effective tracking and monitoring of BGE across years S1 to S3. That's been an ongoing work in progress. What we can see, if we did some historic data to that table, is that that's in a much improved position and it continues to improve. But we recognise that there is further work to be done in supporting secondary schools to have a real focus on the monitoring, tracking and assessment in S1 to S3 within the BGE. So, I mean, aspirationally, we would want that position to improve. And in all of our schools, in literacy and numeracy at the BGE, that we do see real improvement, but there's further room for improvement, and not just tracking level 3, also really pushing to see the percentage of young people that are able to achieve beyond that in level 4 and report on that and track that as well. So it's an area for ongoing improvement that we do have in the plan.
Ruth, you want to come in to add something?
Yeah, and just to build upon what Michael's saying, I think a lot of what we're seeing in S3, where they're looking at level 3 and level 4, I think level 3 is looking very firm for us, and it goes on to reflect what we would see in our senior phase. Level 4 doesn't quite match, does it? It doesn't. We wouldn't have that dip. I think there's a lot of moderation to be done around there. Remember, this was a while back when the moderation was still being undertaken. I think with our secondary schools, the moderation around what a level 4 is, I think we're under-reporting still in our secondary schools. We wouldn't expect to see level 4 being that low.
Okay. And just for the committee, Michael, maybe just explain what BGE stands for.
Sorry, the Broad General Education.
So us lay people should know that, but sometimes we don't know these wee acronyms that education love so much. And no doubt that Francis, Paula and Martin and Ruth and Michael would know that, just like that, but unfortunately, our mere mortals don't.
My apologies.
Any other questions? No. Any other questions? If there are no other questions, can we agree the report and move along to agenda item number 14, which is a report on the work of the West Partnership. And Ruth, are you going to take us through that?
Yes, I'll take you through that. So this is a report on the progress of the Regional Improvement Collaborative and also the plan for the next Regional Improvement Collaborative. Now, of course, during COVID-19, the actual work of the collaborative has had to be put on hold a lot. Some schools have been, schools whilst they were looking at educating during lockdown, and also actually what schools are going through now, just every day, looking at managing cases, managing all the health and safety, then the work around improvement can be stilted. So the RIC have taken a very pragmatic approach around this, and they've said, look, what are the things we would really like to keep? So in the plan that we're asking you to improve, they have taken the previous 6 work streams, although it was 7 because it had evaluation and reporting, and put them to 3 work streams, just putting the big hitters in there. I'm looking at Anna McMillan there, who's a valued member of the family's work stream, but now actually a lot of our ability to meet is more difficult. That's not to say the work of the previous work streams isn't keeping going. It's just to say that actually the monitoring and putting it against a plan will be against the 3 bigger titles. So we're basically being asked to note the progress report and approve the improvement plan.
Okay, thank you, Ruth. First questions from Martin Brennan, Provost.
Thanks, Jim. Thanks, Ruth. This is a really good report. It sets out the processes, the COVID processes in particular, very, very clearly. What I was going to ask, it was a later part of the report, Ruth, and it alluded to the pre-slate review. I think it's on page 163. Are you with me, yeah?
I think you might have jumped a report, Councillor Brennan.
I've done it again.
If you tell me your question now, I'll do it in the introduction for the next one.
Right, I've done it again. Sorry, Ruth.
No, not at all, Martin. At least we know we've got a question for agenda item number 15 when it comes up. Can I ask if we get any questions on the West of Scotland report on the RIC type of thing? So I'm looking to see if anybody's indicating hands. No, if not, can I thank Ruth very much for that? And can we move along to agenda item number 15, which is the Education Update Report? I think you might have a question from Martin on this.
I'm going to try and second guess what the question would be and perhaps answer it in the introduction.
I'll tell you what it was. I think the report on COVID and the laptops and the risk assessment is very, very good. It's dead clear what's happening. Well, it is to me at any rate. It was a question on the priestly review. Now, I think that the appeals process bedevils secondary education at the later stages. In the past, appeals were free. Now we're going to pay a fee for them. I don't know why the government agreed to this. I think the initiative may have come from the SQA, but now I'll get to my question. Have you any insight in what's going to happen with appeals? At the present moment, the system penalises state children. Okay.
Ruth?
Okay, so if I go for the whole report and perhaps address some of the issues around the SQA. So this is a little bit like a week-old newspaper because things are moving so fast in the educational world. I'm reading this and thinking a lot has moved on. So I'll give you verbal updates on a lot of the issues as well. So the positive cases linked to schools and early years establishments, we're still seeing ourselves as relatively low in any of the positive cases we have. For some reason, they all seem to happen on a Sunday evening. We also sit down to have our tea, and then everybody's life's disrupted. Getting holding the problem assessment group. What I would say is that we have had some positive cases, certainly over the weekend, and if you have one positive case, the next thing is you look at the direct contacts to that positive case. Now, in a primary school, it's fairly easy. It's usually the class surrounding that. In a secondary school, it's much more complicated. And we can see a different amount of pupils having to self-isolate due to the classes they're in, if they've been part of a football team. So it can affect one positive case can have a knock-on effect to a lot of pupils having to self-isolate. So that's why, trying to keep as much to the guidance as we possibly can stop in the future a child missing two weeks of their learning, I would have to say. So we're managing the cases. We ran through cases, just mock cases with all of our establishments, giving them random names and practicing, and said you've got 2 hours to say exactly who to send home and who not to send home. And I have to say we've been living that in reality. The head teachers are absolutely up to speed, very set up for getting the information out. Who knows what will happen this week? We will just have to keep monitoring it. But as we're going through it, we're getting just more into the routine and knowing how to get in contact with the direct contacts. The distribution of the laptops. This report is asking for a slight amendment to how we wanted to distribute the laptops. Members will remember last time we looked at the numbers around free school meals, and that's where we were hoping to target. When we looked at that, and no matter how much we pushed, and we have pushed a lot, we still have some laptops left over. And we also know that some of our head teachers are aware of people who may not be entitled to free school meals, but would benefit from an extra laptop. So we're asking for permission to give out laptops to pupils who schools identify may struggle to access blended learning. The next part of the report goes at risk assessments. We are constantly updating our risk assessments. The new guidance came out on Friday. We had to have it implemented by Monday morning, and constantly working with the trade unions, questioning what does this mean, what does this look like, going back, revisiting nationally what it looks like, but also undertaking new risk assessments as the new guidance comes out. Staff and pupil absence levels. Again, I think we have been fairly low in our absence levels for both staff and pupils. But again, if we have one pupil maybe who's been a direct contact of over 50 or 60 pupils, those absence levels are going to go up. We've managed to cope so far with all the staff absence levels if they've had to self-isolate or have been had a positive test themselves, because they could be either direct contact or a positive test. We've managed to cope to date. But again, it can be sometimes, if the planets line up or if the planets don't. So we just are monitoring it on a daily basis, I would have to say. The priestly review. Now, of course, we know that the SQA have made, the SQA waited for the outcome of the priestly review to look at the differences they were going to make to the exams. I have to say everything went quiet for about a week and a half, and but now lots and lots of guidance is coming out directly to schools and to authorities about SQA processes. What I would say is I would expect the appeals process for the exams people sit to be fairly much as they previously have been, because the pupils will be sitting exams, and we now have what I would say is a fairly robust appeals process. The appealing teacher judgments is more difficult, and what we're saying is that every teacher who makes an assessment must have the evidence to back that up. And I saw yesterday, I think, and Sabrina will maybe keep me right on this because she's our SQA guru. I saw yesterday the guidance came out about the moderation of English and maths. So teachers will be given guidance. We will need to look at the appeals process, but certainly there will be, I can't imagine there won't be some sort of appeals process in it. We still have to have a contingency plan. Looking forward, there is a chance the exams in totality could be cancelled, so the SQA will be working with a contingency plan around hires and advanced hires, I have to say. This is the plan in the given circumstances. Who knows what the context will be for schools when we go into the exam period, but we will try and keep things as normal as possible for the pupils who are learning. The insight data has been delayed. We can understand why that's been delayed. Obviously, when the results came out and then there was a change to those results, then insight takes some time to catch up with that. But that means that local authorities can't do their monitoring against the national comparators. So we're just awaiting that, and as soon as we get that, we'll give the elected members their usual briefing on how we performed. The last part of the paper is something I think this committee absolutely needs to be appraised of and aware of, and this is the United Nations Convention of the Rights of the Child Incorporation Scotland Bill, and that's been incorporated into law. And basically, I have listed in bullet points what the bill will expect of councils and committees, but basically it will have an impact on this committee in that all decisions we make will have to take in the UNCRC rights of the child into consideration. So it's one for members just of this committee to be appraised of, because it's something that I can give you a heads up is coming. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much, Ruth. I'm looking for questions again. Martin, you want to come back in on yours?
Yes, Ruth. Thanks very much. That was very comprehensive. Last year, the appeal system was free of charge. Do you think it will be the same this year? Last year's diet appeals were free. Do you think it may be the same this year?
Ruth?
Oh, I haven't seen the SQA guidance on the charging for appeals system. I'm looking at my colleagues Sabrina or Michael if any guidance has come out. I know it was free last year because, of course, of the difference in the teacher judgments. I wouldn't like to speak for them, and I haven't seen any definitive guidance yet. But I'll keep an eye out, and I could certainly pose the question as well through ADES. To say that, of course, if you're looking at a system that might be out of the norm, then it would be good to have a free appeals process, especially in that context.
I'll let Sabrina come in. Sabrina, welcome.
Hi there, it's nice to meet you all. At this stage we haven't been given any definitive guidance on the appeals process. Obviously, the process on appeals actually was decided a few years ago. We have what's referred to as post-result service. So we have everything
Sabrina, can I just hold you there just a wee second? Can we find out who's on mute? We're getting feedback from somewhere. Jim, McLeod, can you put yourself on mute?
Jim, I'm on mute.
Right, okay, sorry. Sharon, I'm looking at you to help on this.
Just maybe try putting yourself on mute, because yeah, I think it might be feedback on your computer we're getting there. So in the absence of Sabrina being able to answer the question for the SQA, we'll look into it. But I'm not aware of anything that is that's come out about the charging, but we can look into that.
Thanks a lot, Sabrina. Sorry for that. Any other questions? No other questions? Can we thank Ruth for the report, and thanks for that update. It is very useful, and it keeps us abreast of exactly what's happening in the education circle, so it's much appreciated. Can we move on to the 4 noting items now? The first 4 noting item, the elected members had a brief on this, and thanks to Ruth for doing that. It was a very long and intense briefing, given the subject of the papers. So I'm going to ask Ruth to very quickly open up, and then I've got people asking already. I think I've already got Natasha want to comment on it. So Ruth, you want to come in quickly and just introduce the paper?
So basically, this is the Schools Health and Wellbeing Survey. We had held out on doing this because of a chance of a national survey, which is still being debated across councils and with the Scottish Government. So we went ahead and commissioned a survey, and the absolutely listening to the voices of young people. As we mentioned earlier in the committee, this is followed up with Clyde Conversations, and we're actually in a scheme of getting the quantitative and qualitative data from the young people themselves. Happy to talk about the health, any aspects of the health and wellbeing survey, but happy to take any questions.
Okay, thanks very much for that. We did have the full report. Obviously, the committee and other members are not. I'll let Natasha first. Natasha.
Yeah, I was just. But we've got a random call-in user 3, I think.
Can I confirm that's Councillor McLeod phoning in again, please?
Yes, can I just say that in the last item I was going to ask a question, but I was put out for some reason or other. I was put in a lobby or whatever.
Right, okay, Jim, but given that fact, we don't want to stop debate. So if you want to ask a question on the previous item, I know Ruth will be quite happy to answer it. So go ahead with your question and then I'll bring Natasha in item 16A. Jim?
Yeah, it was just to say on the last item, I congratulate Ruth and the service and please convey our thanks to all the schools and teaching staff for everything they've done since the schools have gone back, and also to young people themselves for having done so well in difficult circumstances. My question for Ruth is, and it's a question that somewhat I put to health and social care as well. Obviously, there remains a fair bit of anxiety. It's good to see that obviously in Inverclyde we're above the national average regarding attendance, and that's very good. But what's the service doing for young people, their parents, and for staff regarding any anxieties that have? What sort of support or help are we giving them?
Now, Jim, we've got a very long answer to that. I would have to say, Michael's got his hand up, but what I would say is when we're looking at the young people, we've got the Tier 2 counselling coming in, but we've got lots of supporting for our young people around a health and wellbeing curriculum, for our staff, making sure that they've got access to support. We're looking at our head teachers conference this Friday, with absolutely looking at emotional mentoring for people who are absolutely exhausted, I would have to say. This is what people is reporting to us is it's relentless. There's no stop to this, and this is around everybody. I'll perhaps bring Michael in to talk on more of the specifics about the support, but Jim, I'm assuring you there's lots and lots of support.
It could be a paper on its own right at some future education committee, Ruth. That might be the way to give members an idea of the amount of work it is actually being done in that. I'll let Michael in first, and then if you want to take that forward, we can. Michael?
Yes, through you, convener. Sorry, my phone's going. Through you, convener, he's happy to bring a paper back, but just to build slightly on what Ruth said. For example, with regards to staff, we ran a session just the other day with Action for Children, who are the provider for head teachers deputies in schools around, for example, cognitive behaviour therapy in order to who are anxious, and we're doing further work to identify mental health champions in each of the school and provide mental health first aid training for them. I think I have to say I would give huge credit to heads, deputies, class teachers, support staff in schools who've gone out of way above and beyond the call of duty, for example, to support individual families who are very anxious about returning to school. For example, we've had sort of staged and staggered returns to school, allowed parents to virtually see what we're doing, a whole range of different strategies to sort of support where there has been anxiety. And through the rigorous monitoring of the implementation of the new Tier 2 mental health service, we can see that referrals are now coming into that service to provide the counselling where children require it. But they're also doing curriculum-based interventions. So there's a whole programme, for example, going into, I think, Year 3 in Sabrina's, not Year 3, S3 in Sabrina's school for every single pupil, which is about basic level coping strategies. So there's a huge amount of work going on, but we will never do testament to it here, and happy to bring a paper back if it would be of interest to committee.
Yeah, I think it would be, Michael. And Jim, you're quite happy with that?
Yes, it was very good to hear some of the work that's been done, but yeah, it'd be good to find out more. But again, congratulations for all the work, the hard work it's been done by everybody in relation to that.
Okay, thanks, Jim. Sorry that you couldn't get in earlier. We'll go to 16A, and I'm just going to open it up to the question from, I think Natasha was first, and then maybe Elizabeth. Natasha.
Yep, thank you. I suppose mine is more, well, it's part of a question, part of a comment for me. Like, I know that we did this, I want to say 2013, but it seems like that was a very, very long time ago. And I know that we were waiting for the Scottish Government to bring out a similar sort of survey so that we could do it as part of a national framework. So I've totally welcomed the fact that we have actually done this. I think it's really important that we keep doing this going forward. And I know that quite a lot of the stats, it's quite tough to read. It's not where we want our young people to be. It's not what we want to see. But at the same time, I think it's really useful that we know where our young people are at. And I think that this report, as difficult as it can be to read, is the starting point for us making changes to ways that we interact with our young people in our community. And I suppose it links back to what Elizabeth said earlier on, Councillor Robertson said earlier on, is this should underpin every single bit of our COD work with our young people, every single part of our schools work should underpin everything, because ultimately the young people know what they're going through and they have been honest in this survey, or we have to take that they've been honest in this survey, and we need to act on this because some of the trends are a little bit worrying. And right now, if we make changes now, we can hopefully start to reverse that for the next time we do the survey. So I suppose I just want to double check, will this underpin everything that we're doing going forward? And also, when is the next date that we'd look to do this? Because obviously the last one was 2013. This one is now, it's 2020 now. So are we going to do it every 1 year, every 2 years, every 3 years? Like, what's our plan with that?
Natasha, before I get Ruth to come in, again, for members out with the committee, this wasn't an actual education committee document. This was a document for the Alliance board, and that is the overarching board that's in charge to liaise with education, health, every aspect around Clyde's life, really. So I think what you're asking, I will let Ruth in because it is pertinent. I think what you're asking is got to actually come from the Alliance board itself. But I'll let Ruth to come in on that. Ruth?
Absolutely. This is the whole strength of this survey is that it takes a holistic look at life and the communities within which our young people live within. And I think so. Therefore, the improvements around this, around whole service improvements, around the Alliance board, and taking things forward. But I would say there's an awful lot. What we have to balance this with are the very, very strong positive messages about our young people. You know, the fact they're very likely to go into positive destinations. You know, I mean, the presentation I gave was looking at how well our children perform by the time they leave schools, and you know the achievements of our kids is absolutely outstanding. I would have to say, you know, we look where we are in the national standing, and we're very, very high. So I think you have to read the two alongside each other, because this is can be a bit of a doom and gloom. What's perhaps not going so well. We've got to balance it around what the kids do absolutely brilliantly. And I think the other point is that there are things that are already beginning to be taken forward that are beginning to implement. And I spoke yesterday about certainly the Fearless campaign that we're running alongside the police. And Debbie Riley was very, very keen to get that into our schools, because she wanted pupils to be able to talk about things in an anonymous place. And absolutely, that is what we're hearing back, is that pupils are now beginning to use that a little bit more. So there are things that we've already begun that we need to just keep the faith with as well.
Elizabeth, before I bring you in, I'll just let Natasha back in if she wants to comment. I didn't mean to be snippy there, Natasha. Hopefully you didn't take it that way.
No, I understand that as the overall parent board for this report is the Alliance board. I understand that, but I do think that this can still underpin some of the thinking and some of the decisions that we make going forward. So that's just from my own personal kind of viewpoint, but thanks.
Thank you, Natasha. Elizabeth?
Thanks, Jim. I really valued the briefing yesterday. It was brilliant. It's great that we have done this. We did miss a trick with not being able to do it sooner than now. It would have been great, obviously, if we were able to have a crossover in our cohort. The 2013 survey maybe told us how some of our young people felt when they were in S1, and then a couple of years later we found out how they felt in S5 to see if there was a demonstrable change. If we were going to do it again, I would probably urge that type of thinking in terms of timescale, so that you have got a crossover of cohort. I know this is a paper for noting. This is me completely chancing my luck here. I'm fully aware of that. But I'm just wondering if there is an action that we could possibly put in. And it's really about the national survey rather than about our own local survey. I've got a genuine bee in my bonnet about this. I think it's appalling that we've had to wait this long and it's still not there. Absolutely appalling, because it has held us back from having that crossover in our cohort that we wanted. And also, some of the chat yesterday at the briefing was that the people who are engaging in the national survey want to have identifiers of young people and the infrastructure of how they do their survey, which means that, frankly, young people are not going to be as honest with them in terms of how they answer some of the very sensitive questions about their lifestyles and choices and behaviours. And I'm wondering if it's possible. I had initially thought yourself, convener, but I'm actually wondering, and Councillor McCabe's on the call, and I know obviously this is not an Alliance meeting, but as the chair of the Alliance board, or between you both, or whatever, if we could make written representation to whoever is in charge of the commissioning of the national survey, to urge them in the strongest possible terms not to use identifiers and to go with an anonymous survey so that they don't cut off their nose to spite their face.
Yeah, I can only speak for myself, Elizabeth. I think that's a reasonable request that we do it, and I think we agree with that. I think the whole idea of this being anonymous gives young people a chance to actually put on what they actually feel. So I'll liaise with Ruth and with Stephen to see what's the best way of doing that. It's okay.
Through you, convener, we haven't put ourselves forward as a pathfinder for the Health and Wellbeing Service survey for the national one, mainly because young people have just completed a survey, so we couldn't put them through the same thing again. So that's something we need to take in mind, and that there are 3 or 4 authorities, I think, that will be looking at the Pathfinder survey as well. Of course, it's been delayed because of COVID. I mean, I think they're 6 months behind where they would be, but I can raise that through ADES as well, through the links now.
Okay, thanks, Ruth. I'm looking to see if there's any other members got any other questions about that. Jim,
yeah, please. We had a really good discussion about this yesterday, but there's so much information in this survey. You can spend a good few hours going over various bits on it, and I know this has been before the Alliance board, but it's about where you go from here. It's how you action, how you try and better some of these things. Some of the responses that we've had from the young people. I mean, as Ruth said yesterday, and it says in the report as well, there's so many positive things that's happening in Inverclyde that we know about, that we're doing well in our exams. The young people are doing so well in exams. So many young people, when they leave school, are going on to positive destinations. We hear about the high numbers of young people who are taking part in things like the Duke of Edinburgh Awards, who are involved with the uniform organisations like the Scouts. Per head of population, I think we've got a largest number of Scouts anywhere, possible in the UK, and all the other positive things that our young people are doing in music and acting and sports and whatever else. There's a whole host of things. And then we see some of the information that's coming here, and it really does worry me. It worries me that the numbers of young people who see themselves as being living with ill health and disability, that really worries me. It also worries me when I see that 10% of our young people are taking part in physical activity, that so many young people are not having breakfast in the morning. So many of them are skipping lunch, and and if we're doing that now, the effect that's going to have on them in later life, when they're in their 40s, 50s, and 60s, and the impact that has on society in general. There are so many things here that need to be looked at, but I'm glad the survey was done. But it's about where we go from here.
Right, thanks for those comments. I'm just looking to see, Ruth, obviously it's the comments that both Elizabeth has raised and Natasha's raised before that, so it's just very similar comments to what we've raised before. So I take it it's just a plan to go forward to the Alliance board on where we go next on that. Yep. Okay, thanks for that. So the next agenda item, again, is just for noting. Sorry, Ruth, what you want?
Yeah, Jim, there's some people wanted to come in through the chat.
Oh, sorry, Fran. Oh, my apologies, Francis. You're waiting and I'm trying to thing you off. Remember, you're on mute, so like everything else, I've never told you what to do before, but if you can take yourself off mute, Francis.
Right, that's us. Okay, it's just really a comment and a question on the school's health and wellbeing survey. I mean, it's a very, very comprehensive study, but I have to say, when I read it last night, I was really quite taken aback, and I felt a real sense of sadness.
Yeah.
Because of the indicators, the way the indicators going. And one of the points I want to ask, and it's really for people's opinion, is this the result of austerity? In terms of, Ruth's made a really, really good point in terms of when we look at these indicators, it really is quite depressing. And yet, if you look at things like further education, employment, positive destinations, it's really, really good. And I think there's two things to say there. One is how well the schools and the education sector in general is serving Inverclyde. And secondly, what are the things we're having to compensate for? Obviously, poverty is one aspect of it, but there's an awful lot in there, I think, that really needs to be explored.
Yeah, Francis, I totally agree, but I'll let Ruth come in to give you an officer's answer and then I'll give you a politician's answer.
Okay.
Absolutely. And what we've got to remember is that there's no national comparators for these. So there's a lot of things that when we're asking people if they skip breakfast, some of those are generational issues. Some of the ones that's what young people do. So we have to look at it through the eyes of our teenagers and the different stages they will go through. There are trends that we will see that we can expect, because we would that's how we all grew up. What we discussed yesterday was the social media makes life much harder for all of our children. Absolutely, 100% harder, because there are things that we didn't experience that our young people do now. What I would say is, despite everything, and we know, the next report talks about the poverty in Inverclyde, and that's absolutely there. We do have national comparators for that, and we can see the difficult lives our pupils have. They've been open and honest with us. Maybe they're more likely to talk about things. And actually, that could be a positive thing when we look at nurturing schools and we look at the amount we're investing in relationships. Actually, the opening up of mental health around our pupils may be more of a positive than is a negative, because what we can do is actually support the pupils through that. But what I can say is, see, when we're reading all of this and we're looking at all the poverty, and we look at Inverclyde compared to all of the other national comparators, because we have those for our statistics, when we're fourth best for our SIMD 1 and 2, for our poorest area, and we're fourth best in the country for what we're achieving, then that's something here is working really, really well. Absolutely. It was special. And I think if we could bottle it and take it around Scotland, I think others would be welcome for that.
Absolutely.
Thanks, Ruth. Francis, you want to come back in?
No, I think Ruth is absolutely right in terms of what education is doing to compensate for other aspects, and particularly poverty. So, I thank Ruth for her answer. I totally agree with her.
And you can see that Michael's put on the chat as well, we can't underestimate something that we weren't used to when we were growing up, the effects of social media, especially,
absolutely.
We've seen that. From my point of view, you can't have an area of the country that is getting flagged up of being an area of high deprivation, an area of, highest deaths, and an awful lot of things without that having an impact. And you actually seen that in the young children. I think nearly a third of them said that their parents or the people that look after them had some sort of underlying problem, like drink or drugs or disabilities. And that obviously does filter through to young people as well. But what we want to do, it was right doing this survey, and it's right that what Ruth does as well is try and make sure we take the positives for it as well. And the
Yeah.
positives, you know, Paul is here. You've been a teacher as well, Francis. The positives in Ruth and Michael and all our education, the positives are the work that our education people are doing within their schools. The very fact that we're getting, and the parents as well. Sorry,
Yeah.
and I'm not forgetting the parents, and the parents as well, to get these good results. So they are getting good results from our schooling, and that's a positive to take. But sometimes it can be grim reading as well, and it's right that we do it.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Jim. Thank you.
Anybody else want to come in? If not, can we quickly move in? And I know there's an awful lot on these papers, and I know they're for noting, but it's right that we discuss them as well. Anna, can I apologise? I realise we started late, and I know you've got to go at 6 o'clock, but hopefully we'll get as much in as possible before that. So the next item is, I think it's Hugh. Hugh, you're going to take us through the next one, just very briefly. It's a for noting item.
Okay. Through yourself, convener, just to give an update to committee that we've been successful from Scottish Government access to Child Fund for £250,000. This is to support a 13-week programme over 2 years to look at holiday hubs. This is based on the work that was done over the shutdown and the pandemic, working across all the settings. We target childcare for children aged 8 to 5. 8 plus and children with additional support needs. This is a multi-agency approach to working with our young people, and it's to work with young people and their parents who are struggling to provide childcare through the holidays. Happy to take any questions.
Thanks for that, Hugh. I'll just quickly ask, is there any questions for any of the members? Lynn, I'll let you in first.
Yeah, thanks for that. Just a quick question. So is the point of the project purely for childcare? What I'm trying to explore, is it just as a childcare requirement, or is there another requirement in terms of activities that we need to do in terms of sport or well-being? Or I just wondered the point of the project, if it's purely childcare or is there additional benefits?
No, it's based, thanks for the question, it's based on a programme of activities, including sport within that. So it's a full day of activities to support childcare access for parents who are working or can't afford continued childcare. And it's a programme of different activities based on the stuff that we've done across the summer in school hubs through the pandemic. And it is bringing everybody together in one locality. So it is about a multi-agency approach to this. Ruth's want to come in too, I think.
Ruth?
Just to say, the government funding is around getting people back into employment. So basically the funding is around childcare so people can go to work. So it's aimed at, there's a 5 or 6 different groups it's aimed at. So this funding is not about more of the type of thing we do through the Attainment Challenge. This is predominantly childcare.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. The outcomes is about getting people.
Lynn, you've muted yourself.
Sorry, people would argue that was a good thing. No, I'm just saying that the outcomes are based on childcare, and there's no outcomes purely for the activities they do. So it's about people going to work and and lots of people engaging rather than the outcomes. That's what I was just trying to establish. Great, thanks.
Yep.
Okay, thanks, Lynn. Nobody on the chat. Jim McLeod, have you got any questions? No.
No, thanks. I'm all right.
Thanks, Jim. And with that, can we move along to the next forum noting item, which is on the Inverclyde Child Poverty Local Action Report? It probably ties in nicely to what Francis was saying earlier. And I'm trying to see who's taking us through this. Ruth?
Yeah. So this is the Inverclyde Child Poverty Local Action Report. Lots of information that is that's available around the impact of poverty on children's lives and families' lives, and also some national comparators. What I would urge people to do is to go to the delivery plan that starts on page 409 and go through all of the different types of initiatives that we were all involved in to mitigate against the impacts of poverty, and the resources being allocated are huge, not only in time but also in monetary resources as well, to help overcome by the council to help overcome the impact of poverty. So very much something I think we discussed in the last report, the last two reports, sorry, about everybody being aware of the circumstances and the context we're working in, but also a lot of the solutions are already beginning to come up. Happy to take any questions.
Thanks, Nat. Ruth. First question from the Provost, Martin.
Ruth, I mean, it's quite clear that the schools are doing a first-class job for our pupils. But I was looking at 5.2 on page 375, and the fourth bullet point refers to improved attainment. The schools are doing the job. You know, they are sealing their part of the bargain. I'm not so sure that FE colleges are doing the same. I think they are deficient in some ways. They have courses for young people, but they are highly specific and they're for highly specific jobs. I don't know that you can change that, Ruth, but could you comment on it?
Ruth?
Certainly comment on it. And what we see is in Inverclyde, actually, we have a proportionately high amount of pupils go to higher education and further education, more than we would expect to see. So our pupils are going on to those destinations. So when they leave schools, they will be going on to higher and further education. Now, I suppose the question we ask is, are they sustaining those places? And what we've seen recently is actually a lot of places are sustained. What the college is saying to us is if they can get people into the right course initially, then those courses quite often get them onto the right pathway. I don't want to open the whole debate, but what we are seeing is that the higher and further education does, from the statistics and as what SDS are giving us back, look to be successful. We do measure it again, so we do look into that. But of course we will. Sorry. Just one other point. We will. We're going to work with the college as well to look at the skills audit, because actually COVID-19, we need to look at what the jobs will be, and actually the college will be part of that dialogue as well.
Thanks, Ruth.
As you know, I was talking about, you know, like in terms of school qualifications, they used to be on offer at further education. They are no longer on offer. I remember it was many years ago, but the schools used to have returning adults. Some of them went on to take places in university departments, others, well, at least one of them became a lawyer. That opportunity, particularly for young women in their 30s and their 40s, it doesn't appear, you know, I'm saying appear, I'll stress appear, but doesn't appear to be on offer today.
Yeah. Ruth, you want to comment on that, or is that? No, yeah. I'm going to invite Elizabeth in, and then Tommy after that. Elizabeth?
Thanks, Jim. This is a question that has a question before it again, just so that I don't make a complete fool of myself. Can I double check, is this Inverclyde Council's response, or is this the combined response? Because obviously I know it's the council and the health board that are jointly responsible for making a response in terms of this. So is this just our element of it?
We're required for both the council and the health service to make a response. At the moment, as in last year, there are still two separate responses because the system isn't joined up enough for this to happen. The health board have published their plan, or certainly the draft plan is around. But at the moment, we're working as two separate entities, unfortunately, and we still have further work to do to get that in. Having said that, there are elements of this that have got health parts in it. So we have looked for the crossovers where we possibly can. And also, actually, it's not just the council's response. Some of it is actually the government's response as well. Some of this is a national response. So we've worked as hard as we can to reach outwards in this plan. But, you know, it's in this two separate plans at the moment.
Okay, that negates my second question, was because I don't really see very much of NHS Greater Glasgow and Clyde in this report, but that's why. Thanks.
Okay, Elizabeth. Tommy?
Thanks, convener. Ruth, you'll probably be aware of this. Page 385, Fig 4, regarding percentage of 17 to 21-year-olds going to further education. There's a couple of SMID areas in Inverclyde, one which is Ward 7. Do you have any maybe details or background on that? And if you don't, I'm happy to take a written answer later on. But it was just quite a stunning start that nobody for these particular areas went to further education.
Okay, no, I can answer that off the top of my head, if that's okay. Basically, if you are poorer in the world, you're less likely to go into higher education than if you are richer. So there is a divide, and that's linked to the attainment gap. Having said that, if you are in SIMD 1 and 2 in Inverclyde, you are more likely than other comparators to go into higher or further education. So actually, overall, our statistics are very high for higher and further education, and certainly for positive destinations, we're 8th best in the country. What I would say is when you look at this particular graph, and perhaps on reflection, it might not be the best of graphs, these are particular data zones. So when we look at the particular data zones, we're not reflecting the bottom SIMD 1 and 2. We're taking really a very, very small sample. Now, I know that 891 has a very, very small amount of young people in it. So if we are saying that there is a small amount of young people in it, and there is about 2 or 3 in 891 who would actually meet the criteria, and those 2 or 3 didn't go on to university, then it's going to sit at 0%. So what I would urge caution with is looking at just in particular data zones, because actually the demographics of those data zones might not have very many young people in there, and certainly 891 doesn't tend to have many families in. So you need to look, when we're making the distinction, you need to look at whole elements of SIMD 1 and 2 rather than individual people. What I would say is that this graph is in there to actually highlight the extremes. So if you look nationally, it's not between 0% and 22%. It's something like between 20% and 40%. So to take these data zones in isolation isn't really what we would do. I think it's there to illustrate a point. But actually, if you're asking me, is this something we're worried about in Inverclyde? I would say no. This is something we actually do very, very well. We get our kids into university. We've got a high level of uptake to university. We also look at deprivation linked to university, and there are programs specifically for children who live in SIMD 1 and 2 and the lower deciles to help them, to support them to get into university. We had one of our schools go to Cambridge. We get the kids over to give them the university experience as well. So there's a lot going on. So I think that particular graph on 385, whilst it does its purpose to illustrate the difference, I don't think it can't be read in isolation.
Okay, thanks for that question, Ruth. Tommy, is that?
No, that's absolutely fine, Jim. Thanks very much for that response, Ruth. Very detailed. Maybe a wee conversation we'll maybe have offline, but thanks for just giving me some background on that. Thanks.
Okay, Jim McElhenny. Jim, you still with us? Can you hear?
Yeah. Thanks, convener. Officers need to be congratulated again for another comprehensive report. And as declared, declaration of interest at the start of the meeting, as co-chair of the Home Start Renfrewshire and Inverclyde, that's mentioned as one of the partnered organisations. I've seen firsthand the excellent work that all the council officers, staff and the third sector organisations have done, particularly with the food share programme, fortnightly deliveries, going there to sort food and then going and delivering it to much needed families in our community. So it's great to see the partnership in action, all the various strands of it, and the action plan. So well done.
Thanks for those comments, Jim. And Lynn, for comment.
Yeah, it was just to kind of, when I was reading it through, I was thinking about obviously all the kids going on to full-time education, and it's really, really positive. But I've got a wee concern now that we're through COVID, because obviously we're trying to encourage our our poorest children to go to university because education is the road out. But in line with COVID, a lot of the jobs that they did to maintain themselves at college were based in pubs, restaurants, low-paid jobs that have kind of disappeared. So I was just trying to explore in terms of, you know, because a lot of the sport is about kids when they're in school. I can see where all the money and the assistance comes to them when they're in school. But I'm just worried about this group of people that have kind of fell through, or potentially fall through the net because they can no longer support themselves through the uni course.
Yeah, Ruth, do you want to do a comment on that? Because
just picking up that point, and actually when we're looking at our statistics, looking at apprenticeships for people and actually different ways of pathways, and actually sometimes saying the only way may not be university, it may not be the correct way, and actually looking at the working skills. So we've got the sort of what we call a pre-foundation apprenticeship, because we can't think of a more imaginative title, but it's basically getting people into the workplace. Then we're looking at foundation apprenticeships, and we're also looking at increasing the links with employability for our young people going forward. I would have to say I share with you the issues around the part-time employment and people who are studying, if they were working part-time in Inverclyde Leisure's gym, or as a lifeguard and as part-time employment, or in restaurants and during COVID. I think that is going to be an issue going forward, and how people keep themselves supported during the study times. I think that will be something for us to worry about.
Okay, thanks, Ruth. Jim McLeod, have you got any questions you want to add?
Not so much a question, Jim, just a comment more than anything. First of all, can I congratulate Ruth and the service for all the work that they continue to do. This has been a very good report, and again, it's a sort of report that we're not doing it justice. We could actually go away and spend a good few hours, if not a day, just going over all the findings, see what we can do to move things forward. I dare say that, you know, the overall approach will be dealt with, I would imagine, through the likes of the Alliance. It's great to see all the various initiatives, and from the Council to the Scottish Government to the third sector, and to all the groups and organisations and individuals out there in Inverclyde who do so much to try and help things along in Inverclyde. But it's a real shame. It's a disgrace that in this day and age that we've got child poverty, indeed poverty right across Inverclyde and our communities in Scotland and the UK. The UK is the fifth wealthiest economy in the world, yet we still see so high a level of poverty. It's absolutely disgusting. You know, and it's true that a lot of different things. I don't want to get all political about it, but it doesn't help when you've got welfare cuts and 10 years of austerity. And obviously what the district really is crying out for is for jobs, good, well-paid, sustainable work that people have. And, you know, we haven't seen that, obviously, since the demise of the shipyards and heavy engineering, sugar industry and electronic industries. We've lost so much in Inverclyde. And it's just a real shame, and it just feels sometimes you're just swimming against the tide all the time. And it's got to wonder that, you know, we have many of the social problems that we do have, and a lot of it's down to because of these things. Anyway, I'm not going to go on more. Just again, I congratulate Ruth and everyone for all the hard work, and obviously the third sector as well for everything they're doing.
Right, thanks for that, Jim. It's up to me to make us go on a positive note, to let everybody go this dark winter night feeling positive. Remember, there's a lot of good things happening in Inverclyde. We've got the Inchcream, we've got the City Deal to look forward to. We've also got diodes that we managed to save, and a combination of the Scottish Government and the Council as well doing their wee bit to add on. We've got Ferguson saved. So there is good things happening. So in this time of doom and gloom, and it is, I do recognise that we're all suffering here. You know, it is important that we actually do be positive. And one of the positive stuff, as Ruth said, is our young pupils in our secondary schools doing really good work in order to actually try and make sure they're fit for the future jobs market. So I think that's everybody managed to comment. Can I again just apologise, especially to members who came in late? I do apologise to that. I realise it was probably 50 minutes later in our scheduled start time. We will look at that, but really what we try and do is make sure that members' debate doesn't get stifled either. So we want to make sure both the education and communities that they do that.
Convener, there's one more item of business.
What is it?
18.
18 school term dates.
Oh, school term times. Thank you very much.
Come on.
How could I forget school term time? As long as we're not going to get teachers their holidays. Sorry, that's me rabbiting on for one. Those apologies. Ruth, is it you introducing this paper?
Yeah, go on, I'll do it. Basically, these are the school holiday dates. We're setting up a slight change for those who are interested in the May inset day, and that it's slightly earlier because, of course, the exams are going to be elongated, so they're starting on the 13th of May, so we'll go through June. We don't want to have an inset day when we've got higher in maths or English, so we've pulled it forward. But these are the proposed school holidays for 21-22.
My apologies, Ruth. I just had the vision of light at the end of the tunnel there and thinking I was going to get out of here. But no, I'll actually open up to any questions. That is on a high, ending on teachers' holidays and people's holidays. But I'll ask, is there any questions? Apologies for that. And if there's no questions, can I thank you very much for your forbearance? And I'll see you at next Education Committee meeting. Thank you. Thank you, Ruth. And thank you to Diane as well. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Jim.